and ask that Greg does the Karakia, please.
Yeah, kia tātou. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina ke uta, kia mā tala ke tai, e hi aki ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hohu, ti hei Māori ora.
Thank you. Just to start the proceedings before we go to apologies. So Matthew Dean is unable to attend this morning, so he sent a delegate, Miles Pope. So Miles, I'm giving speaking rights to this morning on the delegate for there. And I think everyone else is a member of the committee. So welcome everyone. And to those who I haven't spoken to personally, nice to see you again, been a while. So we'll move firstly to apologies. So we'll take Matthew Dean's apology. Is there any further apologies? Peter Buckley, Peter is an alternate, so that's okay. And any further? I'll move that the apology be accepted. Someone second, please. Yeah. Thank you, Mike. It's actually the corner where we don't see anyone and they get ignored. So thank you for speaking up. all those in favour? Against? Carried. Confirmation of the agenda. The agenda missed a couple of issues, and so we will have a chair's report, verbal. Oh, yep, okay. So we've got the confirmation of the agenda, so that's all up there behind me. Is there anything, any further items that need to be brought to the agenda? No. Well, I'll move that agenda, that item. Anyone second? Thank you, Robbie. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Any disclosure of interest that not already declared? No. We'll move on to the next item. Sorry. What do we do? Disclosure of interest. We've done that. Yeah, minutes. That's what I was going to. He's just keeping me on track. So minutes from on page 6 of the meeting on 11 February 2026. Is there any matters that we need to discuss? There's a couple of issues that I believe should have been in there. Should have. I'm not sure. I'll talk about that in my chairman's report. So if someone moved the receipt of the confirmation of the minutes from February. Don't be shy. Thank you, Brent. Thank you, Mike. All those in favour? Against? Carried. All right. So I can go to the chair's report. Okay. So we're on the same page. Thank you. So firstly, matters that came up, page 13 in the agenda, which is part of the previous meeting minutes. I understand, made aware of it last week. Nadia raised an issue about, sorry, this is matters post the meeting. If you can just look at page 3 of your agenda, matters relating to 4.3b on page 3. Communication between council staff and subcommittee members is via the constituent councillor or subcommittee chair. Issues, requests, etc. go through the chair of the ICM. So if you've got matters that you think need to be raised or have been omitted or otherwise, please come to myself or Robbie as the chair of ICM, and we're the catalyst between the staff, and the staff aren't the what is it? It's not their role to debate what is included in the minutes or actions, and delays may occur, as has happened. So thank you, Nadia, for raising those, and Greg got hold of me last week. So out of that, you'll note that yesterday, I think it was Greg, you sent out an email, matters relating to Te Whakamana. There wasn't an action recorded for training, and there was a seemingly difference of level of understanding of what Te Whakamana actually meant to the council and to iwi and so on. So it's been sent out. I encourage you, those who aren't familiar with it, to read it. If you've got questions, we're here to help get that understanding. So It's not part of the meeting today. I don't think it needs to be. But yeah, thank you for raising that. All right, so also raised in the February meeting was self-administration and matters relating to that. That was referred on to ICM. It's not reported in the minutes. However, without going into detail, it was dealt with by ICM and the matter resolved. All parties have been advised of the self-administrating districts have been advised, and there's general acceptance of the outcome of that. Anyone who wants to know more, please have a chat to us after the meeting. But it's been satisfactorily resolved. I understand, having had another chat with Trevor yesterday. That's fine. What else was there? There was, I think that's it. All right. Well, that's my report just for the moment to cover off details that are not included elsewhere. So, Trevor.
Just on page 16, three of us were put on to.
Oh, that's the actions. That's the actions.
Okay.
We'll talk about that.
We're not up to there yet?
In a moment.
Okay, sorry.
No worries, no worries. So we haven't dealt with the actions. That's next. Sorry. Yeah, so I'll move my report be accepted. If I get a seconder. Thank you, Peter. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. We'll now move to the issues and actions. So there's only two of them. Trevor, we'll go straight to your point. I think it's the second 7.4.
Greg and I were just wondering, what are we meant to be doing? We haven't heard anything.
So my understanding, freshwater matters have basically been paused at the moment because of the RMA reforms. So if that hasn't been conveyed to you, you met initially with Bruce McAuliffe, I believe. You've had a meeting with Bruce, the science man. Yeah, it's quite a while ago. But since then, you've had the FMS 2020 parts maps halted, RMA reform. We're all so. And in reality, I'm not sure that needs to stay on as an action because you're there, you're recognised as a stakeholder, as one of the groups, the three of you plus the three from Karakia. So that's a recognised group with consulting. So I'm not sure that we need to keep it there. Is there any your thoughts on that, Greg?
No, you covered it.
Yep. So is there any questions on that point? Otherwise, we'll go to the first point. Land drainage. So I think we'll cover some of this. Hang on, no, this is the quality and cost of the program, expecting level of service. So that will be dealt with in the LTP. I'm not sure that I brought it with me. It's sitting on my desk, but there is a program happening at the moment. It's what's that? It's about the costs of. Yeah, it's a deep dive into the costs of ICM, but also there's a separate project with outside people working on it for the review of the who should pay. The funding, thank you, Rob, that's the word I'm looking for. There's looking at the funding model for river and drainage, and that's a really deep dive. So who should be paying? Just digress a moment. So Project Watershed is a contribution from likes of the city, all residential people in the towns and so on, contributing towards the cost of delivering rivers, particularly across the watershed. So Project Watershed. So that sort of model may be one of the ones that's considered for drainage as well. Should, and it's one of the things that I've been pushing in the last 4 years, should landowners, and that's all landowners, who receive a benefit, be the only ones who pay drainage rates. There is a benefit to the wider community, in my view. It's a personal view, it's not the council view, I'll make that clear. Personal view that the community as a whole benefits from drainage through the production and the ability to eat vegetables. drink milk and the likes. So should only the landowners pay, or should it be all for one for all? Obviously, under Project Watershed, there is a much lower cost to residential people in towns and cities, much higher cost to the direct beneficiaries, the landowners. So that funding model is being completely gone through and looked at the moment. So what's the time frame on that?
Well, so phase one of the project has been completed, and some principles have been adopted by council. I think it was at the previous meeting. The next phase of the project is currently being scoped out in terms of where to from here. It's not an insignificant undertaking, obviously, to take the lid off our funding policies, particularly Project Watershed. And so that work is happening now and will be reported back to council.
And reclassification of land is not one of the issues. So, yeah. So that's just the bigger picture there. But the matters covered here are absolutely in the long-term plan considerations, which council is starting. The work program through to Christmas is horrendous. Not many spare days in our calendars. So, yeah. That's an update there. Is there any further comments you two gentlemen would like to add to that? No? Covered it all? Greg?
No, nothing further from me. With nothing that we won't cover in further detail in the next paper.
Okay, I'll move that item be received. All right, Robbie, you're up. Moved, seconded. All in favour? Thank you. All right, the big ticket item of the day is the work program. So do you want to open this up?
Yeah, I will. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So, I welcome Brendan Manning and Ruben Mills to the table. So Brendan is our scheme manager for flood protection, Ruben our scheme manager for land drainage. The focus of this meeting is on the 25-26 work program and the delivery of our works in the flood protection and land drainage activities. So it'll be a bit of a tag team between Brendan and Ruben to provide you with an overview of how the last financial year went in terms of program delivery. We'll also touch on matters ahead for the 26-27 work program. And also you've mentioned, Mr. Chair, the long-term plan. So there are some matters that are important that the subcommittee is aware of that will be coming through in the next few months. So I'll hand over to Brendan first.
I'll start with just running through the operational side of things in the agenda. So page 19. So next slide. Yeah, so page 19. There's a table there that kind of has a bit more of a solid breakdown of where the money was spent and how we kind of performed over the last 12 months. But I just kind of put a graph into the presentation to kind of high levelly show that just really we can compare our year to date with our budget, and then I thought it was useful to put the annual plan budget in there. So virtually on the screen there is just a graph of the table that you see on page 19. Some of the key points there, I guess, if we look at the middle 3 bars, the flood protection Lower Waikato is pretty close to spending our budget. We're at 96% when we compare it to the Q3 budget. If we were to compare it to the annual plan budget, which is obviously our original starting point, we would have been 101% spent. So yeah, I guess in terms of expenditure, it was a pretty reasonable year. I don't know if there's any questions on that. The work program, I put an appendix in the back of the agenda to kind of show what we do with that operational program. So there's quite a long table in there that gives you an overview of what our annual tasks are for operations side of things. So yeah, so is there any questions just quickly on the flood protection side of things before I carry on?
Report and happy with it.
Cool.
Oh, Brendan, could you put your light on?
Thanks, Brendan, and good report done there, presented for the meeting. Just a question there with the stop bank work that's been undertaken under Kanoa funding, and just wondering, just got some concern and not sure if there is a big issue, but just how would we go about maybe with the help of Greg through getting a survey done on the stop banks sort of around Motukaraka and probably that area, because I'm not sure when a survey was last done. It might be just helpful for Motukaraka committee if I can just report back on that at some point. So I'm not saying there's an urgent issue that needs addressing. What I'm suggesting is that just thinking ahead a little bit, we probably just need to understand when the survey was last done and what the state of the of those stop banks are. Just noting the information that's been presented and really good information. So that'll be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll start with a couple of comments and pass over to Brendan. So we do have a regular program of surveys for our stop banks around the region. And that is intended to identify what the performance is against the design flood levels. And part of that program is also to review those flood levels, just to make sure that they are up to date with the latest catchment hydrology information that we have. Brendan, I don't know if you've got any awareness of when the last survey was done.
Oh, not off the top of my head, but we all have information on what those levels are. The design height hasn't changed, so we can supply that. Yeah, we definitely got it.
Yeah, so I'll take this as an action there to provide an update of when the last survey was completed. One thing I would highlight for the committee is that a report to ICMC will be received in September, and that covers the condition of the assets across the region as well. So that will help to answer that question.
Thank you, and that could maybe just further to that, Mr. Chair, if I'm quite happy to take that offline with Greg and team. So if that's okay.
We'll record it as an action.
Yeah, for sure.
And just make sure that it's done by the time we meet next time.
Yep. Thank you.
Peter?
Yeah, thanks, and thanks for the report. I'm interested in section 22 there, on page 20, where you've got your key learnings from the 25, 26 year. I like that you've got a number of shovel-ready projects lined up in that small area to fill in the gaps. I think that's great. I'd like you to elaborate a little bit more on section D there about the collaborative working between the projects managers and how well that worked.
Yeah.
Because my professional life was most of what we learnt in smoko and lunch sessions, having war stories of each other doing the same sort of thing, and it's an area that I just wonder how well we work here and how well we work in bringing in some of the affected people in those discussions.
I might come back to that. I might just get into the capital section now. So this is just kind of, I can close off. There's no more questions on the operational. I might just run through the capital side. So, and I'll touch on that as we go. I've got about another 4 slides or so that talk about the capital delivery. So I'll come back to that, eh? Cool. Okay, I might sort of carry on with the capital program. So yeah, the bulk of the report you would have seen is mainly the capital delivery. It's a big part of our program, and the slide up here just shows the overall position that we're 85% spent out of a $9.1 million budget. And there's some reasons to the underspend. The main reason for the underspend was the Lower Waikato Stop Bank program. We ended up having a late start on one of the packages out Tikahonga, and we ended up having to defer the work, which meant about $1 million deferred. That work's contracted, planned to happen this financial year, this summer coming, this construction season coming, and the same contractors will carry out the work. We just effectively started late and ran out of time, and there's a lot of reasons behind that, but that's the main reason for the underspend on the capital program. Otherwise, we had a reasonable delivery this year. Next slide, please.
Just while you go to the next slide, one thing I'll acknowledge is that we had a bit of an odd year, a wet summer and a dry winter, and so that did cause a bit of havoc with the program itself. We obviously intend to do most of our work during the summer period, which wasn't that great this time around. So the combination of those delays with the weather has meant we've had to carry it forward, but we're all good to go. I think October this year is when the contractor will be back on site.
Yeah, the contractor also got held up in Tauranga with the landslides and Papamara and the Mount. So there was a few reasonable reasons for the delay, a little bit frustrating, but we're ready to go this season. So yeah, and that's a bulk of this year's Stop Bank program as well. So I'll put in here page 21, top of 21. I've put just a chart of our main projects. I guess I thought it could be good to show where the bulk of the money sits, and you can see that second column in is the Lower Waikato Stop Banks. The dark yellow is the amount we've spent, and the light yellow is the remaining in this year's budget. So yeah, it just gives you a range of the key projects. There's projects outside of this, but this is the bulk of it. And yeah, we had Mangatawhiri 3s, a couple of those lines there, Mangatawhiri 3 inlet, and the Mangatawhiri 3 screw refurbishment. That was a big piece of work undertaken this year. And yeah, coming on budget. So that's probably the other thing to say with these charts is these figures you see here are the annual budget figures. Some of these projects span multi-years. And I guess like if we look at Island Block, you'll see there Island Block's 1 million there. That was the budget for this financial year just gone. The project budget is a multi-year budget. So this table just tracks the last 12 months really of that project. I don't know if there's any questions on that. Otherwise, I'll keep going.
Just the Mangatawhiri big one with the screw pump. Was there any kind of funding on that, and how much?
Yep. I've got the next slide on Kanoa funding. So the Mangatawhiri 3, we had 324,000 from Kanoa for the that's the Mangatawhiri 3 inlet project. That was the only funding we secured for the Mangatawhiri works was
the total cost
for the inlet works was about 1.8 million. And the refurbishment costs off the top of my head were around 600 and something thousand, 620.
2.4 million.
So I guess just touching on that's probably a good opportunity to talk about that project. Bit happening there, bit of a past with the inlet works that we're probably all aware of. But the screw refurbishment project was actually coming to the program real late. So we identified, Grant Ockleston, our project manager out there, identified an issue with the screw. When we were dewatering the site for the inlet upgrade, we then carried out a heap of investigations and decided to bring forward the screw refurbishment program. That was originally planned for this summer coming. Given we seen issues on site with the screw grabbing on the trough, we decided to fast forward the works or bring it forward, and effectively we slid that program, that 600,000 odd piece of work, we slid that into the program while the inlet was getting done. We've seen benefit in trying to fast forward that and kind of jump on the back of the inlet works. Obviously the coffer dam was in, the construction site was there. So yeah, that's how that screw refurbishment come in early. Was originally planned for the summer.
So you've got 1.8 million there, you spent 1.3, 429 to spend. What is that necessary, or what's it says you've spent 1.3? Is the project finished, or is there more to do with that 400,000? Or if you come in under budget?
I will take that away. I think what that is that's a multi-year budget. So part of this project, this project spanned 2 years. The inlet works spanned 2 financial years. So the total expenditure, that's an error. That's an error. We have spent more than 1.3.
There will be savings because you won't be doing a second coffer dam, and with that screw and all this, there must be savings that have been gained over the 2 projects being put into one.
Yeah, we believe that's half the reason we wanted to fast forward the screw refurb works, was jump on the back of the construction works that were happening to minimise costs. We also minimise costs with the screw refurb through a different way of engagement. We engaged Cullens Engineering to do a heap of work, and worked closely with them and some sandblasters and another firm, and ended up working real well with Grant Ockleston to fast forward the procurement of that. It was quite hard to procure some contracting works for that screw refurb. So there is a number of cost savings within that.
I think just before we go to Nadia, is it?
Yes, sorry, Mr. Chair. I believe a portion of that could be attributed to potentially retentions in the contract as well. I'm going to spend.
Okay.
If I could answer the question, so the project itself has come in on budget. I think we had to slightly increase the budget due to a couple of variations with the delivery of the inlet upgrade, but it wasn't significant. But that 1.8 million up there, that is for the inlet upgrade project. It doesn't include the screw refurbishment. It's a separate project. But in terms of the finishing budget, it was, as I said, it was slightly over budget, but not significantly. That was just due to some variations that we needed to take care of at the end of the delivery.
So those figures don't quite reflect what actually is reality.
So that year to date would be what we spent for this financial year, but this was a project that spanned a couple of years.
Right. Okay. Nadia.
Kia ora koutou, and thank you, Brendan, for your report. This part I think might be for you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking at the numbers and putting the environmental impact with the Island Block pump station aside. Is there a cost benefit analysis done for this work at an ICM level that we could get visibility of? And I've asked about the robustness of those decisions before and whether there's the opportunity to get more transparency on how some of these projects are prioritised. But 5,740,000 seems like quite a big value for a small piece of land. It'd be good to get a bit more transparency on that.
So are you sort of alluding to what you had in your email about the decision matrix, or is that you?
Yeah, it's connected to that as well.
Okay, so Greg, you and I talked about this, and perhaps you could explain.
Yeah, and so in terms of doing a cost benefit analysis, we do that from time to time, depending on the magnitude of the project. It does come down to what's actually driving our various renewals projects. For some of them, they are relatively small, and it is based on acknowledging that we have a commitment to landowners to provide a level of service. Every year we look at the program, we look at the condition of our assets and what work is needed to maintain that level of service. We work very closely with the beneficiaries to understand what might be required. And so with Island Block, for example, that was not just the replacement of pump stations. So I think there's 3 stations in that particular area. And they were rationalised. The proposal was to rationalise them down into 1 station for a number of benefits, as well as putting in a fish-friendly Archimedes screw pump. And so the process that we went through was to work with those beneficiary landowners to talk about the state of the existing assets, look at the different options that were available, look at what the rating impacts would be, particularly in the direct beneficiary area, and ultimately seek their support to include the project in our capital renewals program. We have done cost benefit analyses for other ones, particularly in the capital new work space. I can think of a project, so Muggeridge's, which was a project that didn't end up progressing the Hauraki Plains, but there was quite a significant cost benefit analysis done for that, which was effectively a new pump station to demonstrate the need for that. I think we also looked at cost benefit analysis in the Mangatawhiri area as well, just to get an idea, because there's quite a suite of works required across pump stations and stop banks, quite a lot of investment needed. And so we did a bit of work to actually understand what that cost benefit would look like for that overall scheme.
Just to add to that, during the last LTP, I was quite strongly against where we ended up, not from the percentages and rates increases and all that, but the amount of detail that was in the years 4 to 10. Having been on the district council, we populated the LTP with the best guess for 10 years of work. Maybe it was easier with the roads and waste stations and the likes. But what we've got here in the regional council is there's a lot of work done on years 1 to 3. But year 10, 4 to 10, in my view, didn't reflect or doesn't reflect the out years. And so Greg and I have had some good chats on this. And whilst there is in the detail a work program, I think we're looking forward to seeing greater transparency in the long-term plan. 1, because we need it, so people looking in can have a better understanding of it. 2, with the reorganisation that's coming at us, those who come after us will need to see the program and guide, because there's going to be so much to do. And you may have a mix of new and old councillors. I have no idea what the community will decide and what sort of councils we end up with. But it's important, I think, for me and other councillors, we've come to realise that more detail is needed in that LTP, because that's what the governors will be looking to do, and the staff and our community, the beneficiaries and others will need to see. So I think I've got some confidence that we're going to get better. Well, that's my soapbox anyway, that I want to see greater transparency, and so staff will have to provide that. And Greg's already on notice about that. So I hope that gives some level of comfort, that the greater transparency. I know it's not the matrix, and some of the things with these types of structures on that, things happen that aren't predicted. And so obviously there's exceptions, and sometimes the program has to be brought forward, which we've seen from time to time. So yeah, when it's needed, it's done, but there isn't a general one that you could apply. This is how we do everything. So that's comforting. But,
and we always look at what options are available to us when we know that there's an issue. So that the first step is obviously understanding our asset performance, how things are going, how the condition is, and if there are issues, what options do we have available to us? Those options do range from the full refurbishment, the big projects that we undertake, right down to looking at actually how can we sweat those assets a bit longer to provide that level of service and to delay the more significant capital investment. And so an example that we've done this year is the Swan Road pump station, where there's been an upgrade to the inlet to improve the performance of the existing pump station, which we believe will give, I think, another 20 years or so out of that particular station. We're also looking at Mangatawhiri Compartment 4, again, to look at some smaller upgrades to the inlet to improve the performance of the existing station, acknowledging that the actual condition of the asset could be sweated for a little bit longer to provide what's needed.
so just on that Swan Road, initially there was a suggestion of a complete rebuild now, but with discussions over a period of months with the landowners, the landowners' option was preference to sweat it and get another 20 years. That's been achieved, and the landowners in that area are very happy with how it's performing and so on. So that was a good outcome, talking with, discussing with, and meeting them on site. So yeah, a good result. But hopefully that's covered off some of what you were looking for, Nadia. That's given you any comfort. We have we've got a speaking order, so can we thank you? Lights. You go for it.
Thank you. It does answer some of the questions, but I think although there are always moving parts, because we don't know what's going to happen in the environment next, we also have multiple years of managing assets to look back on to know what patterns to consider for the future. So I think there could be a matrix of some kind, and the idea with a matrix, other than the movie, is that there's more than one decision-making factor, that you have a list of priorities that these things are all considered through. So although it's a moving feast, I think there is opportunity for a structured decision-making process that enables that transparency.
And I think the point is well made.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair. So we are rolling into the LTP, and our focus is to develop a solid 10-year program through the capital portfolio. And so there'll be a suite of projects included across all of our schemes that contribute to that. There'll be different reasons for why they are included or anticipated, because we do need to anticipate as well when it comes to the 10-year program. And that's where I guess I'll be bringing that program to council as a director, and I'll be providing yourself with visibility of that program as well. The LTP process is the opportunity to really test that program stacks up as what we need for the scheme.
Thank you. Now, we've got to page 21, and Peter's question was on page 20. So I just wonder, are you ready to answer that question now?
The learning
Before we go to we've got four speakers: Bull, Brendan, Robbie, and Trevor. So can we?
I can answer that question now. Yeah, so if we jump forward to the key learnings, it's on the bottom of page 21, just after this table.
Page 21, page 20, isn't it?
Key learnings, is it page 20?
Yeah, page 20.
Yep, those key learnings. Yeah. So what I want to do there is just highlight some of the differences we've had over the last 12 months and what we believe was going well or what we learned. And the working between project managers. What I meant by the collaborative working was got a couple of project managers that were delivering very similar projects. And in the past, we've probably just had project managers running their program, but this year we got 2 project managers, especially working real close together, working with the same contractor and pretty much bouncing designs around and making sure that they were both on the same page, so that when we were working with the one contractor, that we were doing the same stuff across different areas. So we've seen some good benefits in having more of it. All our project managers are external, so they're all external project managers. And we've had some real good gains in having project meetings, bringing them all together, understanding each other's projects and making sure we cover the risks off and learning from each other and going forward. And we've had some real good progress in delivering the smaller value projects this year. I look at Churchill Secondary, Saxon's Pump Station, quite a few pipelines, another one up on Efero Way, and pretty basic jobs, but we've been able to bring them into the program relatively easily under the 250K mark, which means we can do a different procurement model. And how we've been able to deliver on the ground is by having these project managers aware of each other's workload and subbing in and helping each other out to deliver. So that's kind of what I meant by the point of working together.
As the bottom line is, was it economic value in doing that?
Yeah, I think so. We've got some good gains on the ground. That's the main thing, you know. Like I look at Churchill Secondary, Swan Road's another prime example, and then these pipelines that have been, you know, in a poor state for a while. We've been able to jump on top of them and really engage with a drain laying company to do those work efficiently. The price is pretty competitive, and I think by having project managers bounce off each other or working with each other, it just allows us to achieve a lot more. I think we also have limited risk when we rely on one project manager to deliver the whole program. We are governed on their timeframes. So yeah, it's just about understanding what resource they've got outside of WRC and making the most of when they're working for us and making sure we get gains on the ground.
Yes, so on from that, is that a recognition that so much of your work is actually managing the project managers and getting the most out of them rather than sort of a high level focus that actually getting them to learn?
Yeah, I think so. I think our work's kind of unique when I look at I look at the 3 waters set up and I look at these guys putting in wastewater treatment plants, huge millions, and we kind of battle with a $5 million pump station, but it's unique. And so, yeah, we're definitely trying to build a good set of project managers that understand what we need to do on the ground and how we need to achieve that. Yeah, I think there's a better that. We've got a new, well, it's probably 1 or 2 years old now, capital portfolio structure. Seen some good benefits in that. So we've effectively got an employee looking over these project managers and making sure we hit the gates. So that's really achieved some good winnings. And I think that's across both zones. We're getting good delivery in the capital space, and we've got the right resource now to really focus in on it. And I think you're right. That's a piece of the puzzle, is making sure our project managers are delivering. Yeah.
So just on this issue, Council has been going through a deep dive in each of the portfolios, and ICM, we had our first meeting, deep dive last week, I think, and there's another meeting within the next month or so for the LTP. And basically, if I can, don't want to open a can of worms, so I don't really want to discuss it because we're onto it. We get a contract, might be $10,000, or in fact the Motor Karakia one, which is a bit of a sore thumb, $30,000 about 4 years ago. But it was actually $60,000 once all the management and every other bit of overhead and bit for the chief executive, bit for Greg, and who never set foot on the place. By the time you add all the extra internal costs onto a project, it doubles. So Council is actually really putting the screws on and saying, are these costs justified? So we haven't got to the bloodletting yet. We're doing a deep dive in understanding and looking at how we can trim costs from the internal processes. So the chief executive has been asked to actually really dig deep, and we're in that with him. And for ICM, that's Robbie and I are leading that charge. and supported well by Gary and Keith over there. So watch this space. I know it's something that's dear to most of the landowners' hearts. I think it's in the interests of the whole community that we do things as efficiently and as effectively as we can. So I'll move on from that. Thank you for that. We'll go to Will.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Brendan, I've just got some questions on the Tikahonga stock bank upgrade. You mentioned that the contractor couldn't start till sort of early mid-January because of reasons that wasn't communicated to us landowners why they started late. And then they stopped at the end of April when all of May was beautiful. I know that they had to make a call when to stop it, but the contractor's surely not making money. They pulled back all the topsoil along the whole stock banks and then had to put it back and grass it. Is it a fixed contract? Is it going to be costing us extra? Are they having to wear that cost?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the delay in April, I'll start there, I guess. Yeah, it was hard to watch the good weather in May, but we had to make a decision. I guess I was heavy on probably trying to pull out of that contract. I didn't want to get stuck into a stock bank job a couple of kilometres in and find that we have a wet May and end up spending a lot more money trying to get trucks out. So yeah, that was a decision to stop, and that was based on previous years. We haven't really had good luck building stock banks in May. So that was the reason behind that. We didn't want to end up incurring a whole lot more cost with slow delivery of material. In terms of the contract, the value is contracted. There is some discussion around the fuel costs. There's some discussion around the fuel costs and how we tackle that. So we've still got an engineer to contract engaged as part of this piece of work, and we'll be going through him and the contractors to discuss final contract.
So it was a fixed contract apart from fuel, is that?
Yeah, it was a tendered price per cubic measuring value based on per cubic meter rate. So we need to go back and have a look at that. There was some costs incurred with the fuel in the last construction season. We ended up paying a bit more for fuel, a bit more for cartage, and we'll be negotiating that again with the contractor in the next few months.
But again, it just seemed very odd. They pulled the whole lot back. You would have thought they would have pulled it back, done it in stage, do a kilometre, another kilometre, rather than pull it all back and then pull it in on it.
Yeah. So I can talk to that. So we completed this section from the road up to the hill. The reason we stripped so much, I agree, it was that we did strip a long way. That job's hard to get in and out of. So we wanted to come in on the road and then come out, down by Sharps Pump Station way. So I get your point. There wasn't a lot of room to strip, say, half a kilometre, fill that, and then come out, because we would have been carting on that anyway. So we wanted a solid haul road for the carting, and there's not a lot of dirt to go on there. So once we started carting, we were going to skim through that quite quickly. There's not much fill in that area. The bulk of the fill's down your end. So there was some reason behind it. And then obviously we got into late April and decided to pull the pin. And the big thing was we wanted to cover the bank, get some grass on it so we could get some protection for winter.
And historically, you've got to get your grass in by Anzac Day. It's the old rule of thumb.
That's it, yeah.
So if you don't get it in by then, you risk not having a good strike. So.
Thank you, Brendan. Just one other question, which may be interesting, given on page 21, key risks looking forward with the capital program are external pressures and consenting risks with the Whangamarino catchment. Is that got anything to do with degradation of the two water bodies, Lake Waikari and the wetland? What do you mean by external pressures and consenting risks?
Yep, that's a good question. So I'm not sure how much you're aware of the Whangamarino Action Working Group. There's a piece of work happening.
He's aware.
Yeah. So, well, I guess then you'll probably know the answer. There's a lot of pressure in that area, and obviously we're in the space of putting flood protection in there. We've got a big project coming on called the Motorcracker Pump Station. We've got Island Block this year, so there's 2 pump stations pumping into that catchment. So when we get into pump rebuilds, we need a suite of consents, mainly construction consents, but they vary. And as part of that, we have stakeholder engagement, and there's a lot of pressure on that area too, in regards to water quality and the like. So Yeah, it's a wide picture. I guess when we go to replace infrastructure in that area, we just got to be aware of the pressures facing that catchment, our stakeholder views and our landowner views, and manage that going through capital rebuilds, noting that we still need to deliver level of service within these flood protection areas. So it's a real pressure point for the Lower Waikato capital program within the Whangamarino catchment. Yeah.
I mean, just this is looking at a big level. I mean, is there some potentiality that that Lake Waikare and Whangamarino could go back to a natural system rather than being affected?
That's not really in the scope of this committee. So
Yeah.
I think that's, we'll leave that for another day.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Will. Brendan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe if possible, could I just go back to Nadia's concern? And I think you'll probably understand, I think you'll understand it reasonably well, Nadia, given previous interactions and your other experience, and also I'd imagine Michelle will too. And I think the discussion here today and a lot of what Greg's team do, and particularly Brendan and Ruben, is based on engineering, delivery capability and delivery. And I think that most of the people at the table here are quite concerned, and probably good to have extra eyes on in terms of, you know, cost of delivery, a level of service, and those things. So when we're in these meetings, and most of this subcommittee, from what I can understand, is around about delivery of more things to do with engineering questions. But I think your question, Nadia, is quite a good one in terms of, if we zoomed out a little bit, you know, the wider context, and this is partly, if we talk about the Whangamarino Lake Waikare Action Plan, and how do we maintain that balance? Now, I think that they're all important discussions to have, but when we come to this engineering thing, we also have to understand, when we talk about cost benefit, you know, it could possibly seem that is all in benefit of potential landowners behind these schemes. Now, I think that from my perspective, and I think that I think if we do zoom out and sort of look at what is really a strong balance for the Waikato region, is about the economic benefit of how a dollar that's earned is actually spent, and the benefit is actually for the wider community, you know, normally in the order of around 5 times. So that benefit then goes out to our wider community in terms of all the things that we can do. But not only that, you know, all of these schemes, it seems that we're just doing engineering projects, upgrades and things, but actually those are all part of the ecosystem of flood protection, which is one of the main reasons why the scheme, the Lower Waikato scheme, went in the first place, was to provide protection for critical infrastructure where people live. Towns like Huntly, and over on the other side, you know, Te Aroha and Paeroa, and all of those communities are all probably heavily reliant on the flood protection schemes in the wider context. So we're not, in my opinion, and I think it'd be good to get other people's opinion too, and I think your one is very valid, and no doubt Department of Conservation and other affected parties, or possibly even beneficiaries to a point, there is a wider environmental and ecological benefit, even though sometimes it probably doesn't always seem that way. So, and I think we're all learning as we go, and what we're probably finding is these schemes are, as they've developed over time, and there's been a lot of settling of, when I say settling, I'm talking about land, how land has actually become productive to a point where it's no longer just about drainage. It's actually about maintaining water balance within schemes, that actually just helps everything, you know, work in a more cohesive way. So again, it's probably something outside of the remit of this group, Mr. Chair. But I think Nadia's question is a good one, and I don't think we should be scared of having some of these discussions. But we'd need to zoom out to be able to do that, and I think that comes down to very much to a policy sort of set those policy settings. What does like you've said earlier, whatever shape council takes going ahead, like through our democratic processes, how we and we've also got Te Ture Whaimana that sits over these processes as well. So I think we're all very mindful of these things, but I think that in a lot of these upgrades, and I don't think it's always spelled out that clearly, Mr. Chair and Greg, around some of those within those upgrades that some of the desires to have more fish-friendly pumps and things like that, or is there other ways of doing things? And I think those things are being explored quite well. Is there a smarter way of allowing water to percolate through a system? And you're probably aware through that sort of process that we're in that, some people are reasonably motivated in terms of, do you just renaturalize the system, or do you actually look at other ways that we can improve water quality and improve ecological health by undertaking other things that may not always be apparent today or 10 years ago, but possibly are more apparent now. Even when we're talking about fish-friendly pumps, these are a thing that we didn't probably know existed as we currently utilising them 10, 15 years ago. We probably was something we've learned along the way. So again, I don't think we should be scared of having discussion. I just think we need to make sure that the checks and balances from this committee in terms of works undertaken is still kept very robust. Thank you. Sorry for the long.
No, that's
chat.
not a point you've raised. So, can you top that? You're next.
Mine only takes 2 secs, but the discussion that Brendan and Nadia is 100% agree. All I was just going to add is there is an economic paper, I think the Reserve Bank did it, that every dollar spent in drainage and flood protection returns between $50 and $70 back to the New Zealand economy. So I think it's bringing a whole lot of information that others have done and the information you've got, Nadine, and bring it together and have a discussion. What's the best way forward? So the information's out there. It's just how we want to discuss about it around the table. So that's all I was going to say.
Thank you, gentlemen, and through you, Mr. Chair. Brendan, you're right. There is opportunity for balance. And thank you. It sounds like you've had quite a look into Te Ture Whaimana, so tēnā koe for that. It is a legislative requirement that we put the awa first, and that balance isn't there at the moment. We had a lot of conversations, as you know, through the sort of process at Motukaraka, how that could be reached. But somehow the decisions made to go ahead with the infrastructure only and leave behind the mitigation opportunities. So we're not reaching that balance at the moment. How we connect the aspirations and what actually goes ahead, I'm not sure, because we don't have transparency of how that decision was made. But we can absolutely work together to get better outcomes. It's good that you can acknowledge that too, Robbie. Thanks. And my name's Nadia.
So just on, I don't want to digress into the Whangamarino Action Plan, but a number of comments that I've heard in some of these public meetings that we've had, and I wasn't able to get there on Thursday night, but there's been challenges as to the likes of flushing the lake, and Mike Scarsbrook brought up an interesting point at the first meeting on Tuesday night, that all the sediment and nutrients and everything else that are in the lake, and comments were made about flushing the lake, and Mike was absolutely horrified, and I thought he was going to have a heart attack when he said, you're going to flush the nutrients and all the rest of the baddies out into the river. We can't do that. And I thought to myself, is that really a showstopper? If we have to deal with the lake and the Whangamarino as a catchment only, and we can't send anything out, then the task gets immeasurably harder. And that's made me start looking and thinking, and I came across something out of the Netherlands. It's called Markel Wadden, W-A-D-D-E-N. And there was a polluted lake, large lake. I think it's a similar size to Waikari. And the government funded basically the dredging of the sediment off the bottom of the lake, created islands out of it between 2017 and I think 22. And in the last 4 years, the water quality and bird life, fish life, everything has improved immensely. That's only one example, and I'm not promoting that, but I just wonder, for those of you connected with the Whangarei Action Plan, are we really thinking, big enough? And so I'm going to be bringing that up in the Whangarei meeting. It's just, I just think we've been too small, and I challenged us right at the start, those of you who were there. Think big. What do we really need to do? And anyway, I digress. But we all want an improvement in the water. No one would argue against that. It's the same in PC1. We all want the same thing. It's how we get there. And I think the word balance, which was I was on the tip of my tongue that you used that, Nadia. Absolutely, it's about the balance of getting there. We're not going to get there today. First, this 10-year plan, PC1's a 10-year plan. We've already taken 12 years to get there. Of an 80-year journey. So, how can we get there? And everything is not bad, but there are things that we can do better. So anyway, I've digressed, but I don't want to carry on with that. So next we have Trevor. You're good? Thank you. Craig, you over the thank you. Well, it wasn't, if I think I heard it correctly, is that the contractors were required over in the Bay of Plenty with the Mount Maunganui landslide, and they were the ones that were over there. So therefore they couldn't start the project here. And it wasn't a deliberate, but obviously the needs over there were paramount and took precedence, human life and all that stuff. So it's one of those exception things. So is that fair enough? Is that what you said?
Yep, that's right. And we actually tendered that job. It was awarded before Christmas, and we're on track to deliver. Or we thought we were on track to deliver the whole 9 yards, and we just that's
I think
right.
there was a greater need, which is a fair enough question. But I think we wouldn't argue that they had to get over there. So Gary.
Just as a councillor, I've just got some concerns, and after the consultations that we're going through at the moment.
Well, let's not drag the Whangarei out too much.
Just again that 28A on page 21, the external pressures. We were told in the meetings there that the action plan is not regulatory, won't be used as anything in basis. So just registering that thought as a councillor that we were told at the meetings.
Yeah,
so to see that pop up here,
the Whangarei Action Plan is and the purpose of the Whangarei Action Plan is, and I've got it in my diary here, but the purpose is to identify actions that could substantially improve the water quality in the lake and the Whangarei. And I paraphrase that. So that's identifying actions is what we're there to do in the Whangarei Action Plan.
Yep.
It's for council then, once it's received, to actually pick those up, identify what's can possibly be done, business cases developed, funding sources achieved. So it is not a statutory document, but there's always the possibility that the information gleaned from that project could be used and developed into regulatory processes later on. That is always the risk. That is always the possibility. But let's not dwell on that because that's another forum.
Just one thing, little small bit there. Some good news, Noel, was that came out of that meeting on record was that the discharges from the Matahura was 0.1 inflow, which is totally compliant with regional council's water quality into the lake. And so that's a clap for the farmers that have done lots of work on improving their discharges and what have you. The outflow was 0.8.
Yeah,
So
I'm mindful that we've got a large report. We're on to page 4 of the report. Got to keep going. So, well,
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Just, I think the point I'm going to try to make is that what's the measure of success? If we're just looking after the infrastructure assets that provide flood protection, we're at 98, 99%, we're doing a good job. But I guess the thing is, by doing that, what's the modified engineered hydrological systems that all these flood schemes are providing? Are they doing? Are they maintaining or degrading or improving the ecological system? And I guess,
and I think that's on record. Mike Scarsbrook has publicly stated that the river flood scheme in Waikato has contributed to the degradation. That's on public record. The action plan, which is not part of this committee's remit, but the action plan is looking to identify issues, actions that can benefit. We've also got, dare I say it, the dock weir that's coming up for renewal next year. It's already been publicly stated that DOC is looking at naturalisation of the levels of the weir, reflecting seasonal. That's all part of the renewal process. So in isolation, we can pick things off, but we've got to look at the big picture. Step back. What is the best outcome for this lake and the wetland? So we're not going to solve it here, but all the points that have been raised are absolutely in the forefront of councillors and staff mind. And there will be a day of reckoning when that report comes back in a month or so with recommendations in it. I don't want to say too much more because I'm one of the decision makers.
So is this committee just looking at how well this work program is done to protect our assets?
Yeah, well, if you look at the remit, what is our terms of reference? Essentially, we're focusing on rivers and drainage, but we cannot discount the bigger picture. That's the environment.
It's a trade-off.
Yeah, there's balance. As Nadia used the word, I was about to use it myself. It's a matter of finding that balance, and we will have times when we will agree to disagree as members of the community. You've got iwi interests, you've got landowner interests, you've got the wider community interests. It's a matter of balancing those at all times, remembering that it's the environment that needs to be protected and enhanced where possible, not to degrade it. So, you know, it's, yeah, if you could sit up here and be God and just say, do this, do this, do this, that would, sorry? No, we're not. And
We have to.
Yeah.
This committee and no other policy committee policy mandates council effective work.
Yeah.
Council gives us. That's it.
we, if there's a policy issue, we feed that into our strategy and policy committee, and that's a committee of the whole of council, and we debate that, and that's where it stands. But look, we're in a period of immense change, unknown. Hopefully soon we will know PC1, the court will deliver that. The government's talking about potentially stopping, halting, delaying. We don't know. We will continue on with the law as it is until somebody says differently. So we've got the RMA, we'll work with that and the processes within and then the regional plan until such time as it changes. I want to move on if I can. Peter, do you?
Yeah, just a quick question for Brendan on the funding of your projects, and bearing in mind that over has been alluded to the balancing of things. How successful have you been at getting external funding for the portions of the cost of these projects that are outside the normal drainage scope? So when there's a fish-friendly pump, which may or may not cost more, something like that, that is for the general benefit, have you been successful at all at being able to getting any external funding for those, rather than just it sitting entirely, that extra thing entirely on the target rate?
Yeah, I can start with that, and maybe Greg can jump in after me. But I guess, put a section in the paper about the Kanoa funding. So that's all external funding for the capital renewals program. So there's a mix between island blocks on there, fish friendly pump. So that we've been relatively successful. That's our second tranche of funding. So the funding we've gone through has been through the Kanoa, and before that was the shovel ready. So we got significant funding for the vessel as well. So I would say we've been pretty successful. Maybe I'll pass to Greg who have a bit more detail.
The key issue though is these projects are all identified, they're existing projects to be done in our program. There's not ones that we've dreamed up outside of the program. So these had to be already in our program, identified and funded. So they're not new programs that we didn't think of before.
No, but I'm thinking of, which is, the things that Brendan and Nadia were talking about, the metrics of the thing, and we've increased the scope of them. We've increased the scope over time. So because of things that we've learned and things that have happened, but the targeted rates and whatever were set based on a certain level of service, and that's been increased. So it's just a question as to how we're funding that.
Level of services increased.
No, I mean, I think it was, so our capital program is greater, for example, than our depreciation that we collect on existing assets. And that's because assets that we build these days are very different to what was built 50 years ago for various reasons. And with the remainder that's funded through a council borrowing program for that. Brendan's right that we have been very successful in obtaining government funding to support the program. That recognises that the government was at the table 50 years ago when the schemes first came about. We're now in the situation where a lot of our assets are coming to the end of their useful life, and so we need the government back at the table to support communities to renew. We've had 2 or 3 tranches so far. One thing I need this committee to be aware of is that we are looking at a different approach now, because it is quite time consuming to go from tranche to tranche with funding. We have put together a new business case to government, which looks at ongoing funding from the government for not only the capital work that we undertake, but also our operating and maintenance costs, because it's both of those things that the community needs to accept, and that's where we need the help of the government to be around the table. So that's very early days at the moment, but there is a business case there that's looking at much more sustained involvement from the government to support the work that we do, acknowledging that you're right, we do have to do a lot more these days than what was required in the past.
All right, I want to kill it.
Can I add one bit?
Sorry?
Can I add one bit?
Yep.
That we've actually got Kanoa, we actually secured funding actually with Kanoa as well to do funding on catchment management work to make the environment in a better place, to make it ready for another weather event. You know, they've helped manage that these resources are all removing blockages and everything. So it's not just about building infrastructure either. So we've been successful in finding funding for other things.
Right, I want to move on to page 22, vessel replacement, if we can, please.
I'll just touch on this slightly, Noel. We're obviously all aware of the vessel project and the delays, but it continues to be delayed, I guess, is the first bullet point up there, but we're getting close. There's some work getting done with the muffler and the exhaust system, and that's with the hope to reduce some noise. So that's all underway. We're hoping to get the vessels planned to be completed in the next, I've got September up there. But what I guess the key part of the slide was just in the meantime that we're obviously continuing to prepare for the works program. We've spent more time, given the delays in the vessel, we've utilised the skipper to spend more time going up and down the river. We've marked a whole lot of obstacles and hazards in the river and put buoys on them, and we've been out and mapped work programs. So we have utilised the skipper to do that, and our river management team. So yeah, we haven't been sitting on our hands, I guess, is the main point there, and we're trying to get as ready as possible for when the barge arrives in the Waikato, with the aim that we can get underway with some trials with it. So
The muffler system, I understand, is going in. You just, without, we're 2 years overdue. We're all frustrated as hell, but it's like the Pantene ad, it will happen.
Yeah, and it's all right, Jordan, if I can share my screen, I'll show you some photos because it does exist. It is floating, and it's quite an impressive vessel. So in terms of the muffler, we have a specification in terms of the noise level on the deck, which I think is about 85 decibels, which is based on maritime standards. The noise source is from a combination of the hydraulic system, which is used to thrust the vessel, as well as the engine and its exhaust, and they both come out the top of the cabin. So the issue that we have is that when the initial installation was completed, testing was undertaken, and it showed that on parts of the deck, particularly around the back of the cabin, that noise level was exceeded, and it was up to around about 95 decibels, I think. And so if we were to accept that, that would mean that it would be a hearing protection area, and it would impose all sorts of operational limitations, which we had never envisaged. Further work has demonstrated that the muffler that was originally installed was not to spec, both in terms of the size of the pipework and also the performance of the muffler that was installed. And so to cut to right now, in fact, we had an update yesterday. A new system is being installed. It is being sized appropriately for the engine. So this is with regard to the engine noise itself. So a larger pipe work is being sourced. A high performing muffler is also being sourced. What we're waiting for now is a time to delivery, so then we can forecast forward when delivery will be for the vessel. So that's positive in terms of that aspect. The hydraulic noise may be more difficult. There are attenuators that we can install, but the advice that we've received is they have a relatively small effect on the actual noise level. So, of the order of maybe 1 to 2 decibels. And look, we've spoken with a number of specialists in the area, and they've all acknowledged that hydraulic noise can be particularly challenging. And so really the next step for us is to confirm time frame, get this new system installed, get it tested, and then we can understand where to from here, and make some informed decisions about what we accept versus what we require further of, because we do need to accept that there are limitations around what can be achieved, but we'll understand where we get to in the next few weeks.
So just share the photos.
Yeah. So this was, you can see those. Yeah, this is from a couple of months ago. See if I can make it bigger. Too big. So I met with the general manager a couple of months ago to go through the program and see exactly where things are at. And so I took the opportunity for a view vessel, a few pictures. This is the rear, and you can see the 2 hydraulic propulsion units that are in place there, with the cabin at the rear, and also a small tender boat. And in fact, probably up the top there, you got my cursor. You can see the exhaust up the top of the cabin there as well. Just a view from standing on the operational deck itself, looking back towards the cabin. So you can see it is, aside from, there's a few things that need to be finished. Things like the operating manual is currently going through review at the moment. We've talked about the engine noise and the exhaust and that performance. But aside from that, when you go onto the vessel, it is, I'd say 99% completed. Down to things like labels, so it's looking really good. You can see all of the equipment that's installed. You can see some solar panels on the roof there. That's just some of the operating. So you can see in the background there that black pipe is one of the spuds. So there's 2 spuds on the vessel, one on each corner, which hydraulically rotate up and then go into the bed of the river to stabilize the vessel when it's working. That's inside the cabin. Various control systems that are in place, and they're all commissioned, and we're going through some training at the moment with the navigation system itself. You can see just a small tender vessel that's there to access our vessel when it's working. Close up of the hydraulic propulsion units, and this is getting into the underside. So I guess what you see above deck is one part of the picture, but there's a whole lot within the hull as well. And so these are actually, I think, the units that are used to secure our materials to the deck of the vessel when it's in operation. And see, it's quite an open area. These are actually the beds that are in place for the 5-day delivery voyage, which two people will be undertaking. So that'll be an interesting scenario to live through for 5 days. That's the engine itself, the Scania engine with various pipework. So you see there's a lot to it. But that's really the heart of the vessel itself. You see all sorts of valves, and I won't pretend to know what every valve undertakes. But you know, there's things like we have quite a complex ballast system on the vessel to enable balancing of its operation, and so that's all in place. That's it.
Mike, it does exist. All right. Until I see it in the river.
Yeah.
All right. So
Yeah.
let's hope before the river dries up that we can get it in.
Well, one thing I'd highlight is that the team have recognised that there is a risk around river levels for different times of the year. And so as part of this project, we have commissioned a smaller swing mooring in the Tuakau area, which will enable us to undertake work in the lower part of the river if the river levels are such that we can't get up to Miriamiri where the main mooring is. And in fact, that'll be the first job of the vessel when it arrives, is to construct that mooring. Everything's in place to get the undertaking. Consents are in place. It's all ready to go.
And unless anyone takes some clams up the Waipā, it will not be going up the Waipā until such time as that happens. So, sorry. No, I think I used to see boats coming past my place in the Waka and the Whakarama. That just hasn't happened. There's a big sign at Ngarawahia saying don't enter this waterway, blah, blah, blah. And people are respecting that. So it's good to see. Yeah. So let's move on. It's 2 years overdue, but let's hope it's here soon.
Cool. So just moving forward, this is just on page 22. I thought it was good to highlight the defects on our land license areas. And it's just showing a trend over the last few years that while we've still got a bit to go, we're trending in the right direction. So yeah, there's a bit of an update in the paper around what our land license team's up to, a review of the 5-yearly fees, and maybe some of the focus moving forward. Yeah, that's. Is there any questions on that? Any questions on that? Yeah.
Oh, Trevor.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we've got a long-standing issue of, how do you word it here? Long-standing complex illegal occupation issues in our area. It's been 3 years now. What's happening?
I'll put it.
Oh, I can update
Okay.
that. So, yeah, we're well aware of that. Trevor, we've been working with Waikato Tainui over the past probably, I would say 6 months maybe. It's been a little bit slow. Waikato Tainui are busy. We've brought in more resource, so we're working with our internal advisors on the best way to attack that. There's some complexities there. Regional Council don't own the land. It's Waikato Tainui owned, and we co-manage it on behalf. So our plan of attack is to still continue working closely with Waikato Tainui. We're working with our internal advisors to gain some momentum there, and we're also looking at if there's no progress or we struggle to get any momentum. We're also looking at what legal opportunities there are. So we're well aware of the issue, and we're attempting to resolve it, and it's a high priority for the land license team and myself to try resolve. So yeah, there's probably not much more I can update from that, but we continue to work with Waikato Tainui on it.
So, Mr. Chairman, I understand that, and I understand the issue too, but where the land has been given away, and it doesn't matter who it is to, and for what reason it's been given away, when that transaction happens, does the council not have a management agreement in place where it's the council's responsibility to manage the flood protection resource regardless of who the owner is? I mean, I'm a bit staggered to hear that we're now in a co-management arrangement for the flood protection maintenance, a long-term thing. Like, there's other there's various packages of stock bank land that is still in private hands. But the council has an agreement that they will manage that, stock bank or whatever on that land on behalf of the ratepayers to keep it in good condition, regardless of who owns the land. And so my concern is that we're spending a hell of a lot of time talking to Tainui, where I'm sure Tainui to say, well, it's not our problem. You guys, there must be surely that land was handed over about 2010 for whatever reason it was.
It's treaty settlement, Trevor.
I know,
Yeah.
but part of handing that over, because it was conservation land and it was part of a major flood protection scheme right through to Huntley, surely the council had an overriding management agreement where they would still manage that land as for the whole public as up to the standard it should be. Surely it didn't come down to, we've got to talk to Tainui to, the stock bank has got a fair chance of being, like, I'd hate to see the situation is where if there's a breach there because of illegal activity, that we have an inquiry and 5 years later, we could have learnt some lessons from here that we should have acted quicker. You're putting millions and millions of dollars worth of everybody's land at risk because you don't have an agreement.
I'll get Greg to talk about this.
Yeah, a couple of things. So, and generally, we are mandated to look after our assets through the Local Government Act, through the Soil Conservation and Control Act as well. So that mandate is there regardless of the land. But regardless of the land tenure, we're still mandated to provide that service.
Yeah.
Through the co-managed lands agreement that we have with Waikato Tainui, it does explicitly recognise the function of flood protection, and so that is the agreement that we have. So when we entered into that agreement, I think that was within the last 2 or 3 years from memory. Yeah. It does acknowledge the role that we play in terms of managing that infrastructure. I suppose with this particular situation, I don't want to go into the detail, but it is very complex. We are trying to find a reasonable pathway forward, but yeah, it is frustrating in terms of the time it's taking to resolve this. I have spoken to our land officers, and maybe Brendan might want to verify this, but as far as I'm aware, there's no concerns regarding the state of the assets on that property. I think the occupation is on the landward side, away from the assets. But look, that doesn't take away the need that actually we do need to have unfettered access. Our staff need to be safe to go onto whichever land they need to inspect the assets and ensure that, as you say, they would provide the level of service that's expected, because we don't want to get caught short during an event.
How often are you...
My concern, Mr. Chairman, is that I think it's a regional council action and not dealing with the Tainui thing. I mean, you've informed them, but after that, I believe the council needs to act on the ratepayers' behalf.
So we have done more than inform them. We have been working very closely with Tainui to actually look at what is the pathway here to get this resolved. As I said, it's not simple. Unfortunately, I would have loved it to be a lot more simple. What I could suggest, Mr. Chairman, is that we take an action out of this look at. But Brenda did mention that there will come to a point where we do need to start to enforce our requirements to inspect that site, and it may well be that we're getting to that point where we need to look at what some stronger powers are to make sure that we have safe access to the site to inspect those assets.
So an action there. So how often are staff going on site to inspect and ensure that the asset remains in a state where it's able to protect and defend the land?
We've been to site a couple of times. It's difficult getting access on the actual site.
Why?
the landowner, well, not the landowner, but
Is it
the
the occupier?
occupier. Yeah, the occupier there. Yeah, essentially is difficult to work with. So that's hence why we're working through Waikato Tainui to find out the best way to move this forward. So we've inspected the site from both ends of the lease agreement, and we've seen it from the landward side. The occupation is all on close to the road, between the stop bank and the road. So we're well aware of it. We believe, yep, well, there's a risk. It's not critical. Like, we don't think the bank's going to fail overnight, but we definitely agree we've got to get a way forward. And hence we're looking at if we can't get a way forward in a reasonable time, what our legal options are. So as Greg says, it's quite complicated, but we definitely are starting with the land management agreement and working through that, which has a avenue within it to dispute resolution. And that's our intent, is to work closely with Waikato and get it sorted. So
what's the time frame actually for goal for resolution?
don't have a time frame at the moment, Noel, but we are, no time frame at the moment, but it's definitely a high priority, and we just got to work.
So through you,
get some
Chair, I'll
buy-in,
take
yeah.
an action to escalate this matter.
Mr. Chairman, can we have an action point that we're not here in 6 months' time?
Greg's just, he will escalate this. He's just taken an action. So we'll get the wording later, but the action, and this was brought to my attention months and months ago. You say it's been going on for 3 years. The reality is, if it's not right, councils are notorious for taking too jolly long to sort things out, and we're nice to everybody, but we can't be Pollyanna all the time. So, and I understand the flip side of that, and we don't need to go into those issues. But this needs, it's not only the land, it's the people behind the stop bank. Our first priority is to people and the defence of those people who live there, and that's everybody. And I understand you say the water will go back to Huntley, so there's a large community, but we don't want to see this on the front page of the Times and on national news. We want this dealt with as respectfully as possible, but as quickly as possible. It's probably a hard parameter to keep.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Now, Mr. Chairman, we've worked closely. I've worked with Brendan and Harmon, the land lease guy. It is a difficult situation, but it cannot go on any longer. That's what I'm getting at.
All right. So that'll be recorded and it'll be on, and let's hope it's not there at our next meeting.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Next item. We'll get to you shortly, I hope.
I think that might be over to Ruben now. Yeah, Ruben.
Okay, Ruben.
Kia ora, Mr. Chairman, thank you. There was some very good discussion in the last paper, so it's always a hard one to follow. So I guess the first thing about land drainage is it is provided as part of a partnership with that. So we've seen the metrics around the delivery of it and how many drains and how many separate areas we have. But it is to say that it is a big work program that is delivered in as a partnership with the landowners. So if we move on to onto the next slide. So yeah, that's just a picture of the expenditure and the budgets across that area. Yeah, and I guess what we're saying there is that budgets in some areas are a little underspent for the year. Generally, it's tracking at about 80%. Franklin Waikato was underspent at 71, and that reflects a sort of a year that was probably a little bit wetter in the time that suppressed some of the weed growth in those areas. And when I say we do it in a collaborative approach with the landowners, is that sometimes a lot of our work program is driven by requests from the landowners, who will be our eyes and ears in the flood scheme. So we don't get to go out and have a look at every drain that's in there. We do rely on the landowners to come to it. So that reflects a little bit less requests from the landowners as well. And that sort of, when you're looking at those figures being slightly under, It also reflects that there's probably a little bit more weed sprayed and a little bit less sediment dug in those areas. So machine cleaning down in Franklin, Waikato area, a little bit more spraying in that area. Yeah, so next slide, thanks. Yeah, and that's a graphical representation of that as well. So across the board, I guess services met, budgets slightly under. Good communication with the landowners as far as I'm aware from the teams out on the ground. Yeah, next slide, thanks, Jordan. Yeah, so for the spraying programs went well. There's about 60 kilometres of drains sprayed, 40 kilometres in the Franklin area as well. And machine cleaning went well at about 160 kilometres, which is 2 circuits of the figure 8 in the Akaki area. So from what I'm hearing from the landowners over there, not too many issues. Gary's working well. Relationships with the guys on the ground is working well. So reflected quite well, yeah. Franklin Waikato, approximately 52 Ks of their spraying in their spray rounds. Machine cleaning about 39. So that's down a bit in that. It also reflects that there's a little bit more work done in the self-administration area as well. So those kilometres are not necessarily reflected in that 52 Ks either. In the Waikato, approximately 875 Ks of spraying done. Big subdivisions, big drainage area delivered well by the team and by the contractors. I guess in that area we did have more weed growth. That was later in the season, so again that reflected the differences in the seasons, rainfall patterns and warmth. It's been a great year, and we've seen grass growing all year. It's only just slowed down, thank God. Yeah, so and machine clean probably 39 Ks. Yeah, so a good balanced program delivered over the year. Next slide, thanks. Okay, so great delivery of service. All our services were delivered well across the area. Levels of service met. No complaints received. Relationships with the landowners have been quite good, and I hear our guys are talking with the landowners out on the ground all the time, getting requests to do various work and then responding to those. Yeah, and yeah, so good relationships being maintained. You know, honest, and if there's a good discussion to be had, the supervisors are having it, working it out, which is always a good way to do it around the cow shed or in the paddock or over a cup of coffee. So those sort of things are happening, and it's happening on the ground.
Right. One question: we've been very pleased actually with how the regional councils managed its land drainage works and so on. We had issues with the Waikato District Council. One example of that was it took over a month to get them to clear a culvert underneath Bankies Road. Several hectares of land underwater for over a month, and just took repeated requests coming in from multiple landowners to eventually get Waikato District to take action. So whether there's the restructure will help sort that problem, or whether we have to have some mechanism for regional council. Steve Edwards said his hands were tied. Just keep battering Waikato County. Eventually it resolved, but yeah, it's a bit frustrating when the rates we're paying to get a service was hijacked by another council that weren't doing the job.
So just for those who don't know, Waikato District Council, I was talking with the Chief Executive and the Mayor recently, and they're going through a restructure. There's quite a number of staff, I think 40 or 50 positions have been identified for disestablishment. And the number of staff have already gone. Some have taken elected early retirement. So there's quite a bit of upheaval within the Waikato District staff at the moment. So that might not settle down for a little while.
Yeah, I guess just to add to that through the chair, we do try and maintain a good working relationship with our sister councils. So what we don't want to have happen, and sometimes it does, is having the wrong council being rung for the wrong issue. So if we can work closely with those councils, we can get issues resolved quite quickly. and there are some legacy ones that don't, which we work on. But in general, Mr. Chair, I think the relationship there has got better over time, whereas we've got people we can contact on both sides. So we can openly go between each other without saying it's your issue or it's your issue, but saying how are we going to resolve this issue. Then that's the better space where we need to be working with our sister councils.
I've always found Megan May, who's the director, general manager of that whole area, quite approachable. So
Yeah.
Okay, next please.
Okay, so some projects and overview. Okay, so this is a picture, I guess, of some of our drain cleaning activities. It's actually over in the Hauraki, and it's part of our Thames Valley drain planting project. But I've put this one up because it shows pretty much all our aspects of our drain cleaning activities. So what we've done there through there is that's a drain that wasn't cleaned. Obviously, we've gone through, we've reshaped, refenced, and then we've hydroseeded and we've planted in characters around this. So the aim of that is to create an environment where you need to do less weed spraying and less machine cleaning. So that's a very successful project there. And the reason I say it's successful because we all fund these sort of projects from all across our drainage areas. And there is the potential for this to be brought over into the other drainage areas, into different areas. So
who pays for the fencing?
So the fencing on there, some of that came out of the Kano. So there was some of this was Kano funded up to 60% and 40% from the region in terms of that. Yeah,
so no landowner contribution there.
So landowner contribution in there is they did some of the pulling down of fences. In some cases, they have done some construction of the fences. So it's been a bit of a collaborative approach between landowners and various activities from nurseries and that. So it's a good collaborative project across 2 years. We're into our 3rd year now. And in future funding rounds, we would look for other opportunities.
Just a question there, Ruben. Thanks for that. That's really good to see. Just for context, how long ago was that work, the start of that work undertaken, and the photo on the right? How long has that been in that completed stage?
So that's about 2 years
in
there.
And are we doing any sort of monitoring of sedimentation build up within that waterway, on that particular waterway?
It's a good question because there is a bit of work that was done earlier because the earlier trials in there are probably now 5 or 6 years old. And there does need to be a look at how we can, pick up some water quality because it's always good to have good data to base our, and findings to base future planning on. So it is something we are going to look at because this sort of alternative approach can figure into our, maintenance and our the way we do land drainage and deliver it in the future in some areas. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll go to Robbie and then Will and then Gary. We take those off for the speaking.
Thank you. No, actually, I've been the recipient on one of these programs this year, not because I put my hand up. It was my neighbour signed up for about 2 kilometres of drain planting. And then the Pyral team came to me and asked if I would be willing to put up some of my land on the other side of the drain to complete the program. It's been a really good program to work with. They haven't actually asked us for any contributions. It's totally funded from the Kanoa funding and regional council. All we've been asked to do is pull the old fencing down and basically get on with it. So it's been a really good program. Well supported in the valley where in the Thames Valley where it's on you've gone and picked out drains that you required that there could be real benefit from, and where there's erosion problems and other things. So and I know the rollout next year there've been there's quite a few for next year as well by the sound of it. So the community's taken this on board, and there's farmers are out there putting their hand up saying, please come to me, or we'd like this program rolled out on our property. So it's just the start of it. It's, I don't know how many Ks are we up to over the now? There's quite a few. It'd be in the vicinity of 20 Ks or something.
Yeah, it's something like that.
Yeah, so it's growing. So the potential is to is all there to some of the older ones that did the original trial work you did before we got the Kanoa funding. There's some photos of that somewhere in the vegetation, and what it looks like is, 5 years down the line is totally different to that. Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you. Well,
Yeah, no, that's definitely interesting. So that's pretty much shading the water, making it cooler, making it harder for vegetation to grow. I guess the risk is sedimentation building up, but I'm guessing that's Karakia sector, is it? Is the one, and I guess the question is how long will it last? Hopefully 10, 20 years, but yeah, it looks a win-win if it's
original ones are already in over 10 years.
Some
They're already, the original ones are in over 10 years when regional council did the trial, so they're lasting way longer than that.
Cool.
The biggest thing is they're not having to clean the drain as often, so I think it reduces the drain cleaning most probably 3 times.
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, so we are finding that we don't have to drain clean as much. It's also providing some filter on the side of the drains. The other thing we're finding is that because some of that seeds, that we're getting some seeding going down through the catchment as well. So next year is fully subscribed by landowners. So future funding and future funding will help spread that further. So just a quick shout out to a couple of staff members. Really, you got Nicole Soiree and Chris Podiminter are the 2 people. They're the champions on the ground for this. They've delivered very well. So that's leadership on the ground from some of our officers promoting this work, picking up success from the past, and they've got a team behind them as well. So yeah.
So is this only in the Karakia, or is it across in the lower Waikato as well?
It's only in Thames Valley at the moment. So there is the opportunity, come funding, to move it to other areas. Won't be ideal for everywhere, but it's part of the mix that we should be looking for the delivery of land drainage in the future.
I'll go to Gary and then Craig and then Brendan.
Most of my questions are answered from now, but looks pretty good. The only thing that I was questioning was, but I think it's covered by the time frame, was whether you needed some specialist spraying to go in deep in under that or not. But I take it that the shading, the covering over the flowing drain, is it?
It's a flowing drain, and the shading in that seems to suppress the weed growth, but also provides some quite good sort of environment for fish because the water's a bit colder during the summer periods.
Yeah, my question relates to, obviously quite a bit of this may be on peat soil. Have you taken into account future subsidence in relation to how you design the drain, so that in the future, if you have got to, depending on where water gradients and so on, whether you have to do future deepenings?
Yeah, and I guess that's always a concern because most of that subsidence of peat is around land use. So if we watch the land use, then we don't have to modify as many drains. But I guess the issue is that because you're not dealing with the bigger species, you're not you're managing your banks better as well. So there is the opportunity in areas, if it does subside a bit, to make wider channels. I think, but these are all existing channels that are in place. But peat subsidence is an issue across those areas that we need to be including in our future planning.
Thank you, Brendan.
Thank you. And I was just wondering, Ruben, no doubt Robbie would know, but koi carp is becoming a little bit more prevalent over in the Hauraki area. Just wondering what effect is there any way that koi carp or pest fish could be eliminated or so possibly guarded from being into these catchments, and because they'll be one of the biggest things that will drive bank erosion. So just wondering about that. But my main question was around ecological health and just understanding, do we have any evidence and studies in those particular drains / catchments where this work's been undertaken, and I would imagine there'd be quite a measurable benefit from an ecological and environmental perspective.
Just seeing, Robbie nodding his head, so he was going to.
Well, either Greg or myself can reply to that. It'd be Greg than me, but.
Yeah, I'll let Ruben talk to the koi side of things. I mean, as I think Ruben mentioned earlier, we did some bit of an assessment of this approach a number of years ago to actually look at, what is the bang for buck that we're getting. And I think that outcome was very positive.
Yeah.
And it's been used as justification for this further work that we're undertaking to continue drone planting enhancements. I think it's important to acknowledge that we get this funding. Yes, it is great to have the environmental enhancements, but it also improves the performance of the drainage system as well, and the cost and affordability for ratepayers, which is a reason why we've got government around the table supporting this project at the moment.
Yeah, definitely support that. In terms of koi carp, the systems that we're working in there, I'm not sure there's many that are actually up in the system, so they would probably only enter that in a flood situation where they would come over the top of a bank or through a floodgate up in those areas. But there are definitely koi carp present in the systems in the main rivers over there now. Being a bow hunter that chases them around and fishes koi carp for many years, you do have the concerns if they do get into that system. Yeah, got to register that conflict of interest.
Koi carp is mainly north of North Road. It's from there down. It's more down into the flax block. That's where the issue is with koi carp. But they do come up with the floods, as you said. I'll have them dead in my paddock if we have a severe flood. The trial work I think we went through about 10 years ago. There was some data that said that would be about could be up to a 30 to 50% reduction in costs by doing the drain planting because of all the maintenance. What was the other question? There was one other question you had. Craig, what was the other question you had? Yeah, this actually isn't in Pete. You can see the clay in the banks. All the trial work was done up in Tatua and Waitoa on silty loams, where the original data was done that 10 or 15 years ago. And then, as I said, I can remember this coming through the Waihau Piako Flood Protection Drainage Committee and through the Thames Valley Drainage Committee. Geez, 12 years ago when this work started. So it's been around a long time, and there's quite a bit of information and study work put behind it. So it's not, this is not new. It's been going on for quite a number of years.
Yeah, and that's true through the chair. As Greg alluded to, that base information was used as part of the funding process that we went through for the latest 3 years of tranche funding. Was used to do that.
Photos,
No, not for me. I think it's
just a few flood protection photos to finish off.
Gary, what's your question?
Well, I wasn't going to bring it up about.
No.
But since you mentioned it.
He's known as Gary Coy Maguire. So carry on. Yeah. It's another one of our nightmares.
Cool. I'll quickly go through these photos. So I just got a number of photos. So this is Mangatawhiri Compartment 3. Obviously standing in the drain there, but maybe our next photo is another photo of Manga 3, which shows both structures. So for those of you maybe not fully aware what we did there, we've done the structure at the front there, which is what we call the dewatering structure. Essentially its function is just the sluice gates you can see in place there that we would put in when we need to dewater the main station for when we want to do bearing inspections and the like. So this project being done over, the construction was done this summer, but the design was done the previous year. So Grant Ockleston was the project manager on site. And yet project's completed now. And if we go to the next slide, I thought this is just a photo showing the screw going back in. So there was quite a bit of work happening on this site, for January right the way through to the end of April. And it's in a good state now. We've got a new inlet, a way to dewater the structure without having to manually build a clay cofferdam, and we've got the screw in a good condition with the top bearing being rebuilt and no longer now does the screw grab the side of the trough. So it's in a good state, that site. And yeah, good work from our project manager and the landowners to get that to happen. We had a wet summer, which gave us some challenges, but we managed to get through. So next photo,
I
please.
just acknowledge that our Kānao funding comes with very significant expectations from the government in terms of what we deliver and by when. This project was under significant pressure to get it finished. And the team put in a huge amount of effort to achieve the milestones that Kānao had set us. So I think I do need to acknowledge that it was a project that needed a bit of a rescue. It happened, it got delivered well, and we did actually more in terms of the refurbishment as well. So job well done.
Yeah, and I think there's some learnings there as well. If we were to start from scratch, maybe we wouldn't quite deliver what we've delivered there today, but we've ended up with a pretty reasonable solution, we feel, yeah.
Bobby and I went up just after this was completed, and it's quite an impressive piece of work. And I think having taken the opportunity to put those screens in place, yeah, that's looking out into the future and will save a lot of money going forward. So I think we've done some elsewhere. This is the one that we were main issue. This was the one that was causing all the grief, and we settled on. This was, yeah. Yeah, and when you get on site and see that screw, it's a big piece of machinery. So, yeah, but I think I congratulate staff for identifying the issue with that screw and getting it sorted. And, yeah, ending up with a really good product. Probably useful.
Yeah, how many more photos are you going to show?
Oh, I think there's 3 or 4.
I'll let it go through the photos and I'll ask a question.
This is just showing some more. We can go through these relatively fast. Onifero is just a pipe replacement. So yeah, that's another more pipe replacement work. This is in the Mangawara. Next photo, please. Yeah, some more pipe work, and these are the projects where we had the project managers, 2 different project managers working across the program to make sure we were building the same stuff and we had consistency. But good projects that have been on the books for a while that were able to be slid into the capital renewals program to virtually deliver more than what we set out to deliver. So
are we putting concrete or plastic pipes? We're not putting steel, are we?
Those are plastic HDPE, so steel coming through the shed there into a jib bolt system, and then HDPE through the bank. Yeah. Yep. Next slide, please. And this is Swan Road. So this has been discussions ongoing for probably maybe a couple of years, but I think we got into a good position here. As Noel earlier said, we started looking at a rebuild there, in the order of 8 odd million probably. And after good discussions with landowners, we decided to sweat the asset for another 20 years, and we looked at the pumping levels and agreed that we could all do that. So what we've done here is we've looked at the old structure, worked with a structural engineer and some local engineering companies and construction company, and effectively repurposed the existing structure to build a platform that is 4 meters wide, with the goal this year to put a new platform on there and rate it for a little digger. So it's a little bit different to what we would normally do. We'd normally build a new structure in front of the old and leave the old as is. But we think this is a significant win. It's a low cost option to get 15, 20 years out of the asset. We've also put a new switchboard in there. But the other important factor is this pump station's mirrored across the schemes. Mangatawhiri 4 is almost a sister pump station, quite identical essentially, both 2430 stations, and we're looking to do something very similar at Mangatawhiri and get another 15, 20 years out of that site. So yeah, it's a low cost option to sweat the asset and get some performance. Just recently we've had some information. We've been monitoring the change in the pump, how long the pump runs, and we're finding that the pump is running for 30% longer than what it was before this project. And there was another bridge 50 meters upstream. We've removed that as well, and by having a wide platform, removing obstacles in the drain, we've managed to get the pump doing less stop starts and pumping for longer. So and this is just the completed works for Swan Road. Yeah, the landowners had some good feedback on this, so it's something we're going to be trying to roll out a little bit wider.
So Mike was on site. He was attended the meetings as a local rep for the area. Would you like to comment?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Talking to the landowners, they're really pleased with the way things have gone, and getting that other bridge out of the way and that other set of screens with that great big block of concrete that was actually making a weir rather than allowing the water to get to the pump has definitely made a difference. And once we get this set up for a digger to clean this, lowering the screens and getting a digger set up to clean the screens will make all the difference. The only thing they're saying right at the moment, well, last time I was talking to Matt, was that it was the weed cleaning was a little bit of a challenge at the moment, but
So that should be alleviated by the platform coming.
Yeah. They know that'll be. So yeah, good job, and we've achieved what we wanted to achieve.
And look, as a councillor going along to the first meetings, well, when we, there might have been meetings in the last couple of years that we weren't there, but I just got the sense that the landowners appreciated the engagement, their initial resistance, and I know one or two arms went up in here, but the staff were challenged to come up with alternatives. And I think the display of listening and hearing what landowners were saying and working out a solution that is beneficial for the landowners, but also the environment. And sweating an asset, no one wants to spend money if it's not necessary. So a good solution all round. So yeah. Did you want to say anything on that, Greg?
Yeah, I think I'd highlight, so Brenda did mention earlier that, in this area, this is in the Whangamarino catchment, and there is certainly a bit of tension in terms of the outcomes that we're all trying to achieve in that catchment. And we're always looking at opportunities to, I guess, as you said earlier, Mr. Chair, find that balance. This is a great example where we have managed to find that balance, minimise the investment into this asset right now, provide the level of service in the short to medium term, and then we can obviously come back and revisit that in 10, 20 years for our future selves. Obviously, there are some assets that require a significant amount of work that, they do require different solutions and possibly different scale of solutions, but this is a great example where we've been able to, I guess, extend that level of service and provide a good outcome for the landowners.
I'm mindful that I want to get to the rates and the targeted rates in those areas, and I know Trevor wants to introduce something about this self-administering. I don't want to come up against our supposed finish time. What is it? 12:30, and run out of time and not do justice, because this is going to go into the long-term plan. So just the last two questions, which is Miles and Nadia, and then I want to move on to. Oh, sorry. It's not on.
No, just put me on the end. I just said at the end, at the end of the photo.
Okay, Robbie is the last. Okay, so we'll go with Miles and then Nadia. Thanks, Miles. Can you, pull that closer to you, please.
Compartment 3. Great what's ended up there, but cost is the issue. I think the screens, everyone.
Miles, can you come closer to it? Pull that machine to you, close to you.
The screens are in place, and I was down there the other day, and there's a lot of weed hanging up on the screens. Everyone is still saying they want those screens out, because that is set up. Mangatawhari 3 is set up for all that weed to go straight out. The cost, well, yeah, huge. We still believe we could have done it better.
That's disappointing to hear. Why have we got so much weed in the drain? Because I always hear about weed in the drain. There shouldn't be fence posts and all that, because the farmers should be keeping them out. But why have we got so much weed in the drains?
That's a good question. I think I agree, Miles, with the cost, and that's early discussion points on would we build that again. I think we could talk about that. We probably wouldn't and the cost was high, so noted. In terms of the screens, we obviously had no screens there, and the weed just went through. So in terms of weed volume, I'm not sure it's any more than what we would expect anywhere else. It's just that now we're seeing it land on the screens and therefore requiring to be cleaned. We're monitoring it, so we're monitoring it weekly to understand, is it causing issues with the pump? Is it starving the pump? And what issues is it doing to the catchment? So we haven't landed on a solution moving forward on the screens, but I'm aware of what you're talking about, and noted, yeah.
So, you know, I'm struggling, Brendan, insofar as what's the cause of the issue, the weed? And so why aren't we taking the weed out of the equation before it hits the screen and causing those issues? So why can't we get rid of the weed?
It's just a natural process because you get that weed growing from the base of the drain. And when you have water coming down, it gets washed onto the screens. Now, that pump was originally set up without screens. It doesn't need screens.
Have you got any comment to that? You're monitoring it and then.
Yeah, like the weed, we can, even if we were to clean the drain more often, we would still see weed build up on the screen. So I guess, yeah, there's no way getting away from it.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I think the key thing for us at the moment is monitoring weekly about what's happening. It is an Archimedes screw pump, so it does behave differently, especially with blockages. We've seen that with Churchill East, and that again, we have quite significant weed building up on Churchill East, but it doesn't actually impinge the performance of the pump. So really what we need to understand is not only what weed is building up, but what are we seeing in terms of water levels in the drain, in the sump itself? Are we seeing pump performance issues? Then we can actually decide on what action to take to ensure we continue to provide this level of service. So the more that we can get help from landowners to not only pick up observations of weed, but also water levels, photos, etc., that'll help us to make a good decision in the end.
Well, Matthew's good at sending through photos of the weeds and the amount of weeds coming off the screens. So
we're also looking at putting some telemetry through there.
So I'm wanting to move on. So if you
finish, yeah, but just one final thing. I think with all these schemes, it's important that the meeting is had before the work on the scope of the jobs that are done. You know, I could have saved a hell of a lot of money on that, just as that is there, where you've got the duty pump, the weed is getting sucked into there, and that's a huge job by hand cleaning that.
Right. I think yeah. So you're monitoring it. So once you've got to a point of monitoring, when there'll obviously be some learnings of decisions. Can we have we've got Nadia and Robbie. I want to kill it there and move on to the rates. Otherwise, we're not going to, and I'm happy to come back to it, but I want to get the finances sorted out, not at the last minute. So have you got a time frame you'll come back with the learnings?
After winter, we'll monitor it through winter. The plan is to put some telemetry into that system, so our Waikato system will give us some data on levels. At the moment, we're pretty limited on information we can get off a computer system, but yeah, we're monitoring weekly, come back after winter and make a call around what issues we've seen and how big an issue this is. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, thanks. Nadia and then Robbie. And then we're done on that.
My part goes back to the Swan Road pump station. It looked like we had some good engineering outcomes there, some good drainage outcomes. Mr. Chair, you mentioned reaching balance with this project. I was wondering what environmental outcomes were included in this.
We just looked at the engineering side of things. So in terms of environmental outcomes, we haven't enhanced anything on there compared to what we were when we started the project. So the project scope was essentially just to improve health and safety on the site and minimise erosion on the drainage falling into the drain, ensuring that we can still deliver level of service. So we didn't look at any environmental enhancements outside of that scope. It was just a minor capital works renewal project. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Brendan. So just to confirm, no opportunities for better environmental outcomes were considered in that project because it was out of scope.
Yeah, it was. And as we were originally looking at a larger station rebuild, I guess it's where we have those kind of projects where we might look for broader opportunities that will be coming down the road. But I guess what we've looked at as well as the existing infrastructure and how can we enable that to perform a little bit longer and give us a bit more breathing space in that catchment.
In 10, 15, 20 years' time, that will absolutely be looked at.
And just to add to that, in terms of the zone, Nadia, we definitely look at environmental enhancements across the zone from a wider, higher up view. This pumps directly into the Pangareia Canal where we've done large amounts of environmental enhancements, stabilised the canal, extensive planting, setbacks on fencing, reduced sediment coming out of the Waikiri control gate. That all fires into where this pump goes to. So while we might not have done environmental enhancements on this site, definitely within the catchment, we're doing what we can. Plus, we have a catchment management program, and it does different set activities here.
Right, Robbie, thank you. Oh, sorry, did you have supplementary?
I was just going to say thank you to Brendan, and I understand that you're doing what you can within the scope. My question is whether that scope aligns with Te Ture Whaimana and what we're meant to be delivering on in regards to changing how our water quality challenges are progressing, because at the moment it just keeps getting worse.
Fair enough. Robbie.
I'd just like to thank the team for their effort and the workload that we've got through this year. It's been really hard with that weather event at Christmas, just after Christmas, and we were wondering if we were going to have enough temporary pumping on site, and there was a lot of moving parts that everyone was dealing with, and our outside consultants and project managers. We were not really made aware till nearly the end of January that Manga 3 had a problem with that top bearing. After it might have been even February by the time it was actually analysed correctly that there was top bearing was not right. Then when we got it apart, we actually found out that the
sidewalls.
How to service that top bearing wasn't even the right manual. So it wasn't in the bearing wasn't even the one that was said it was in the documentation. So Grant and these guys actually had to put a huge workload. I just looked back through my phone. This pump didn't come out till most probably the end of February. It was back in on the 7th of May. It had pulled out, gone to Tiara or Cullen's Engineering, fully serviced, put back into there and operating by about the 10th of May. Christ, this wasn't even in our work schedule this year. That's how fast this had to be turned around because we already had that temporary pumping on site. These guys put a lot of effort into making this happen. And I understand, Miles, it did cost a lot, but they went out and did everything they could to make this pump station fully functional by the end of that working season. So there's a lot of time and effort went in here, and we all 100% annoyed with the price, but they actually made up for it in other ways too. So just thank you to the whole team and everybody involved. They went out of their way to deliver here in the end. So thank you.
And we were getting regular updates, just about daily updates on, where it was at.
I got far too involved in this that I should have, but I knew this was a priority and I got involved, but it definitely worked out in the end. And thank you guys.
Yeah. Thank you. Now, that's the end of that. Can we move to the LTP?
Yep.
Okay, so that's on page 27. So what have we got here?
I can start things off if you want, and we can pick things up. So yeah, we are getting into an LTP, and we're in this stage now of starting to bring together what we need to for budgeting in September, October. In your pack on page 27, what we've provided for is a bit of a summary of some drainage adjustments which we believe need to be made. These are based around the work programs that are required for those subdivisions, current balances as well. So some of them we do have reserves that are going into the negative, which we do need to remedy. I think if those of you been around the table for a bit will recall that I think it's 50% of the operating budget is what we aim our operating reserves to be for each subdivision. But we have 92 of these things. I think it's 92 is the number, and every single one is managed independently. And so what you have there is half a dozen subdivisions where we do believe that adjustments are needed. Alongside this, I'll just highlight the fact that there are a few areas that will be coming through the LTP process for your awareness. One is asset revaluation. So there'll be a report coming to Risk Insurance Committee in a couple of weeks, which covers the proposed revaluation. The outcome of that has been that the actual values of the assets has not changed significantly. But we are looking at a change in depreciation, quite a significant increase in depreciation costs, and that will be considered by Risk Insurance coming up. What's driving that is a shift in the methodology that we use and shifting to a condition-based approach. Effectively, what that means is that we have some assets that are wearing out quicker than the book values that we have. And so we do need to, on average, across the entire scheme, accelerate depreciation to account for what we would expect to be earlier renewals. So that'll be flowing through into things like depreciation, which I know is of an interest to this committee. And the other thing, Mr. Chair, you mentioned is around our capital program. We always put together a 50-year program. Generally, we have a very good idea of what the best 3 years looks like. We have a not such a great idea, but an idea of what the 10 years will look like. And then beyond 10 years, we have just an idea based on what we know about our assets, useful lives, end of lives, etc. But we'll be reviewing that program and putting a much greater emphasis on the 10-year program to give council a lot more certainty about what's coming up.
So can we talk about the specifics of this here? And Trevor, you spoke to me yesterday in relation to your self-administering. So just think about, I was going to bring you back, but I didn't, and I apologise for that. I was going to put the question to you, what, if any, reduction that you're looking for? So can we just give you time to think about that? Well, no, I just want to get through these first ones here. So they're outlined on page 27. Is there anyone that's got an issue? Now, I've been quite hot with Greg on this issue, is that I noticed some of the reserves were getting towards that negative, and with government suggesting 4% caps, and at this stage targeted rates are included in those caps, that we needed to get the reserves back into a positive, or a plan to get them into the positive, rather than getting to a stage where you've got a 4% cap and you're just going backwards and backwards without the ability to catch up and be able to do work, should there need to be emergency works and the likes. So this is what they've come back with. I identified these, I think it's 5, isn't it? 4 or 5. Is there anyone who's connected with those? And remember, we've got an obligation on this group for the whole of the Lower Waikato, not just our own neighbourhood. So is there anyone that's got an issue with what's proposed here? Brendan.
Just a question, maybe for Greg, through you, Mr. Chair. Greg, just understanding CapEx and OpEx, some of what Brendan and Ruben have discussed earlier almost seems to me that that should be considered as OpEx. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not an accountant, but I'm just wondering, you know, when we bring it into our CapEx budgets and CapEx spending, where do we draw that line? I guess that would, when you create these budgets, there'd be quite careful attention given to what should be CapEx, but what should be OpEx. And I would have thought that on existing equipment, such as compartment 3, the refurbishment, was that considered as OpEx expenditure, or like in other words R&M, or was that considered as CapEx?
So that was CapEx, and the reason for that is it does change the useful life of that particular component to the pump station. In terms of how we draw the line, we have an asset management policy that defines what is considered CapEx and what is considered OpEx. And look, it can be, when you go from organisation to organisation, that line can change a little bit depending on the type of work that's considered, especially when you're looking at operating and maintenance costs. Sometimes that line can shift, but as a council, we define that through our asset management policy.
So maybe that was probably more of an extreme situation there, but In saying that, by doing, I think good analogy around sweating of assets, or what we term as sweating of assets. And I think that, when you're doing new structures to put diggers over and things like that, that's different. But when a pump is being essentially, you're delaying a full replacement of a pump and you're doing a refurb as part of I see it as a midlife. It's almost like it's a little bit more than changing the oil on your car, but it's actually, I would, and if that was in our business, I would absolutely term that as operational expenditure, R&M, rather than CapEx. If it was a new pump, absolutely CapEx. So maybe the parameters, Greg, I'm not sure if this would actually help the overall budgets and help how we spend, but I just wonder whether it might be helpful just to consider it slightly differently, perhaps.
Look,
We'll be doing that in the LCP, looking at the definitions.
I'm not sure. I'd have to check whether that policy, it has just gone through a review, that policy. I think one thing to consider is the way that these things are funded as well. So OPEX is funded for the year. So say, for example, it was about 600K for that refurbishment. If we had to fund that through OPEX, that would need to be found from that financial year. Whereas because we treat it as capital, we can spread the cost of that over the life of the asset. So it doesn't land right now. It gets spread over basically those who will benefit from the use of that asset. Yes, it will.
Supplementary to that, though, and I think Noel's just touched on it. If the depreciation rate is being considered, surely within that depreciation that should be being put aside, then that would allow, including inflation, that would allow for the allowing for that asset to have as long a physical life as possible. Some of these items, such as screw pumps and things, that they after 50 years, if they're maintained well, they've probably got easily another 30 to 50 years in them if they are maintained. They're very basic pieces of kit, as you and Brendan, Ruben, probably everyone in the room will probably understand. And that's where I think this is quite different to, say, something like an axial flow pump, which has got a lot of high wearing parts and, like bearings and things that need replacing. Not only that, they're really hard on fish life and ecological, from an ecological perspective. So I just wonder whether if we put some different metrics over it, and maybe, and I'll get your point around the 12-month thing, but if that depreciation has been set aside, that could be an ongoing thing that just allows these things to happen, Greg. Maybe if that helps everybody.
Yeah, and it's something I spoke to earlier about, we apply book values or best practice to the asset lives where we have that information. I think with this pump, it actually was a bit of an unknown quantity because we didn't really know the condition of the structure until we took it out and could do a scan. And we were actually pleasantly surprised. Actually, it was in really good condition, minimal corrosion, and that gave us the confidence to be able to renew it and put it back in place. What I can do, Mr. Chair, is I can take an action to provide a copy of our asset management policy and guidelines, if that would help to just show how we consider what's considered OPEX and CAPEX.
All right, then we'll go to Mike and then we'll come to Trevor.
Just looking at the long-term plan on drainage, but we haven't quite got that far yet, have we?
What page are you talking about?
Well,
yeah, we're on page 27.
Yeah, well, I'm looking at page 27 and it's showing that Churchill East under South Administration is $17,000 in deficit on reserves. And you turn the page and it's got $393,000 in its self-administered account. So there's something wrong there, and I'd really like to know where the $17,000 disappeared to. I know the ratepayers would too, and we've got the same situation with Mary East. It's a bit hard trying to figure out from these accounts who owes what and whatever. But traditionally, the way things used to work was if we had a debt to the council sent us a bill and we paid for it. Now we seem to have numbers of fingers in the trough, siphoning off money left, right, and centre, and nobody knows quite what's going on with this, as far as self-administered goes. But I think all the self-administered ones are all in a healthy credit. So why are we paying more money into a reserve fund? And how does this reserve fund keep taking money, but we keep ending up in deficit?
Okay, so I know the council throws collection costs for collecting the rates on and so on. So can you explain?
Yeah.
And this is what concerns me is that there's nearly 400,000 in their bank account.
Yeah.
Yet we've got a separate account here at the council that says they owe some money. And also, do we send invoices showing what has been deducted before they're paid out the rates collection money?
So in terms of the way you operate the self-administration, some of these deficits that we're seeing there are potentially legacy issues coming through. So been sitting there for a while until of late, I guess, as a council, we didn't necessarily understand either what was sitting in the in the reserves for each of the self-administrated areas. So that was a request for the committee to understand that. So we've included that in the reporting. And it's right that there is more money sitting in those reserves. So there's a couple of questions that you ask yourself about that. As part of that process, we should settle the debt, I guess, so that there's no interest being drawn on that. And then we would need to work out whether, and this is up to, I guess, the guys that are on in those subdivisions, whether the limit of rating that is currently going needs to be held or reduced to bring that down to what is, a considerable or not too high level of funds sitting in those accounts, I guess, because it's collected money, then it's sitting there and it's invested and you're getting interest in those sort of things. But so that is a question around, and our land drainage management plans suggests as a guidance that there should be 50% of the operating budget should be held in reserve. Whether that's held in the reserve for the self-administration group or not is probably some work to be done on that still. But the issue for the way that we manage self-administration is that generally they save the money or the funds by undertaking the work, so that we would be putting across the contracted funds to do the work. And by doing that, we would have a minimal amount of administration cost that comes across out of that. We would be retaining that to cover our costs as a council. And then that would be, so on charge to that situation for auditing, for work programs, for whatever we need to do against the council. But the general administration costs, that would be the running of all of the district council, all of the regional council land drainage aspects for that district, those charges come away. Labour becomes minimised. You get less general subdivision costs, and you get reduced management costs. So that's where the two saving areas are in that area.
So could you, in relation to Churchill East, provide an invoice to the chairperson of that Churchill East group, setting out what that $17,052 actually relates to, so that they could settle that debt? And in reality, all those others, when you look at the funds held in, say, Orton, you've got 11,000 in council and 3,000. Who dictates what council hold on to? Because if you've got self-administered, surely they should be looking after the money. And if any money is to be taken out, collect the rates, a statement issued or an invoice issued, or a credit note saying, 10,000 collected, we've taken 2,000 for overheads or whatever, and here's your 8,000. So there shouldn't really be that much in council in a reserve. So can we have a conversation with the self-administered drainage districts as to what they want retained where?
Yeah, in particular, we could do that. There is where we've set up the self-administration agreements and there's requirements for the council to understand, we would retain those funds.
Yeah, but you need to account for, by way of an invoice, setting out what those funds are and the balance, which from what Mike's comment is, doesn't appear to be happening. I'll come to you in a moment, Trevor.
So because there will be some, and then for the labour parts of that, it's only charged when it's actually used as well. But yes, so we can take that as an action, I think, Greg, to
because the
have a
issue
look at
is
that. Yeah,
if an invoice is issued to the drainage district and it's not paid, well, then there's obviously an ability for the next rates collection to retain that money and satisfy the debt. But I think we've got to have a trust model here as well, that council shouldn't be holding on to money just in case.
So through you, Mr. Chair, there's certainly an opportunity to work with each of the self-administration areas to agree. So reserves are there for a purpose.
Yep.
A number of purposes. One is for the operational comings and goings and rainy days. Some subdivisions actually do hang on to a bit more because of the nature of work that might be required. For example, where there's capital that may be required into the future because we don't have a land drainage capital program. I think what needs to be considered is how best should the self-administration subdivisions have reserves held? Should it be held by the entity itself, or should it be managed by council? And the reason I say that is there may be auditing requirements that mean it may be more appropriate for council to be holding that reserve. I don't know the answer to that, but I think it's what we need to resolve. But there shouldn't be two different reserves, I guess, being held.
That's my concern.
So that's I think what we should resolve as part of this long-term planning process.
So Mike, you had a supplementary on that.
I was just going to say, over the previous 30 years, up until about 5 years ago, council collected rates. They took off the cost of collection and so forth, and they paid the rest of the money to us. Any work that council did in our scheme, they billed us for, and then we then paid that back, right? So there was a very clear flow of what happened to the money. Now we get $30,000 taken off us. We get told we're allowed 22. And what happens to the rest? We don't know, but we understand that there's a reserve fund there now when we've already got, $200,000 in reserve, and Church at least has got nearly 400,000 in reserve. So there's a bit of a transparency issue, and where's the money going?
And so that's the question. You go back to page 27, Church at least, a deficit. Really, that should be sorted out as to whether the money's owed, paid, and the reserve is not in deficit. So it's.
And so we do have a proposal just at the top of page 28 there to hold back this acknowledging that there is a significant reserve with that subdivision, to hold back a portion of that payment to resolve that deficit, so that then we can move forward.
But I think, in fairness, it's got to be discussed with that landowner group, because to unilaterally just take money is not transparent. So I think we can take this offline. Church at least needs to be arranging a meeting to sort this out, have it explained what that 17,000 is for. If it can't be accounted for, well, then it's reduced accordingly, and you guys settle the debt. It's easy for me to sit here and say all that, but I don't want to see that there the next time we look at this, because you've got that 400,000 sitting there.
Through the chair, you're happy to take that as an action. We should be able to substantiate the costs that are sitting on there. It'll include things like fish recovery, those things around the modified drainage networks that we as a council provide that service. So happy to do that. This is one of the reasons we raise this, because once we start looking at understanding what reserves are held where, that does bring the question to us, who should hold the reserve? If you've got $400,000 in the bank, you shouldn't be setting a deficit.
No, absolutely.
On the backdrop of this, we just also need to understand that there, in terms of the rate rises, there's also the opportunity for landowners to request more work. So, and we have had some of those discussions, and to increase the rates to go around that. So there's sort of other issues that are sitting in there as well. But also in general, over the last 6 years, we have had substantial increases in costs. So part of the work we're looking at the LTB is a general increase across the drainage reserves as well, because contractors have gone up between 9 and 44%, depending on what equipment you're using. Your chemicals have gone up 25 to 30%, and your power, depending on where we've got power and pump stations, has gone up 42%. And so that sits in the back of that LTP proposal as well.
Okay, so I think we've covered these ones. Trevor, if we can go to you, you raised the issue with me yesterday. So,
Yeah, and it's just getting some clarity on what we've been talking about. The self-administered thing, we've been going 5 years, but we got it all sorted. It's just the money now, which is this here. And so Reuben has said, which is what I've asked for, is that the council policy is to have 50% of the annual take in reserve. So let's, on page 28.
annual, half the operating costs, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay. So page 28. Let's for instance take the horror one. Okay, second one in. I've taken off the sheet over here. The annual rates takes 25,316, so $25,000. Okay. So the council policy at the moment is in that reserve account for horror is to have $12,500. And that's what we want to know. Okay.
Yeah.
So in that case there, at the moment, the reserve in the council fund is 53,000 for horror.
Yeah, 53.
Okay. So the maximum amount the council should have in that account for horror is $12,500.
Either or, but yeah, it could be in the self-administered account. Somewhere it's got to be held.
Well, we're talking about self-administered.
Yeah.
Okay. So on the council policy, the council should have $12,500, half of the annual operating budget. The rest of it should sit in the funds held by the self-administered group.
But it can actually sit in the self-administered group as well.
Yeah.
No, it can. It doesn't have to be in the council, but the
well, what I'm suggesting is that, and this is a personal worry thing, is that 12,500 sits in the council.
That's fine. If that's what the district wants,
okay,
that's fine.
And then the rest of it sits in the group fund. And the reason for that, the group then can see that fund climbing or going down. And that's the amount that they would then say, okay, in our opinion, that fund's getting a little too high, so we can ask for a rate reduction.
Right, so essentially you're asking for, say, 40,000 to be transferred across to yourselves. Council holds the 12,500 in council as the reserve.
Yep.
And then if you, well, that would give you, was it for nearly 50,000 in your bank account?
Yep.
And you might say, well, can you reduce our rates by 10%?
Well, we have an AGM once a year.
Yeah.
And landowners are so, well, we've got this figure here. What do you want to do? For instance, the very simple one, Blair's been running a year. The operating cost for Blair's is within $3 of $7,000 a year rates take. Okay. So in that case, the council should have $3,500 in the reserve account instead of $6,500. It already has $5,000 in there, and the landowners are asking to reduce their annual rates to $1,500 because of that.
So is there a resolution from the AGM to that extent?
No, but we're following the process now.
Yeah. So if you could get a resolution to that effect through your committee, and send that in early so that we can get that into the LTP process, because
I'll do that. But
let's cover the, tick the boxes and dot the I's and all.
Yeah, I understand that. But that makes it consistent and simple. And the case where Mike was alluding to Churchill East, they should get a bill for an explanation for the 17,000, and then possibly their annual rates are $30,000. So there should be $15,000 sitting in the council coffers, right? So maybe the invoice is for 17,000 plus 15,000, and then that's it. They then make their annual decision on what they do with their $300,000 or $400,000.
So would you be happy for self-administered, as a result of that work with the health and safety component? It was identified through the legal opinion that some more work needed to be done on the agreement. So as part of the agreement, would you be looking to suggest that half the reserve, the policy is to half the operating costs be in a reserve, that be retained by council, because that would then actually identify where that reserve is held.
Well, I thought that was the
No, it doesn't have to be held in council.
Okay.
The idea is there is to be a 50, the goal is 50% of the operating costs, whether that's held by council or whether it's held by self-administered.
Okay.
If it's easier to clarify that it's held by council, so that if there's emergency works or whatever, they can just get on with it perhaps.
What do you think, Mike?
But I think it needs a little bit, well, only you're the representatives here, but because we need to incorporate this into policy change.
I'm just trying to make it simple.
Oh, look, and we'd all like simple. Yeah.
So, Mike, your opinion?
Yeah, our actual operating costs for this past year, which when we did a lot of desilting, was 18 grand. We traditionally were taking around 20 grand a year. About 3 years ago, all of a sudden, we weren't asked, it just jumped to 30, right? And I got told it was for this reserve fund, which doesn't seem to have accomplished much when we already had all this money anyway. I don't have a problem with us having $10,000 or whatever sitting in the council reserve fund. It's fine. But stop taking 30,000 off us, take us back to the 20, and we'll just carry on using our reserves.
So like, we need your committees to actually put something in writing, what you would like, so that we can incorporate into the LTP. And how soon do we need that, Greg?
So we'll
October?
we'll undertake our budgeting in October, so it would be good to have something through
September
within a month.
So,
Yeah,
do you think, Ruben, do you think that's the simplest way?
Yeah, I think through the chair, I think we should probably have a drainage workshop, work that out, and it does sound like a simpler way.
Yeah.
And if the landowners in those areas are seeking rate reductions because they're holding big reserves, then I guess that's a choice that they have to bring as a group to the table.
We're trying to make something simple, and consistent.
Yeah.
That's all.
Well, if it's a drainage committee, or whether it's they work with the self-administered, and if it means bringing them together, whatever, but we need something in writing before the end of September, please.
Okay.
Yeah, committed to doing that. We'll take that as an action.
Thank you.
Can I well, before we close down, just backpedal a bit on those grills for the pumps. Have you got an action for that? Because the Churchill East is an issue that hasn't been sorted. And now we've got another one. Where was the other one? Mangatafri or whatever, the one you just done.
Department 3, isn't it?
With the concerns about the weed in the grill. Can that be an action where it's actually sorted?
Well, I think from my understanding that there's work in progress, they're monitoring it, and so maybe an action would capture it, that the learnings will be brought back to this committee, and what the proposal is, or what has actually been put in place.
Well, I think with the Churchill East, there's a history there with that grill, and I think the action should be whether council agree that the new pumps or the existing pumps operate with a grill or without a grill.
That's a bigger issue.
But it's got to be sorted.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we've done a heap of work in that space in terms of whether our new pump station should be screened or not in the Archimedes, with the new Archimedes fish-friendly pump. So in terms of the issues on Churchill Main, I'm not sure there is big pumping issues there. We're pumping that drain down relatively quick, and we can show you the graphs that show that. So we currently are aware of the weed building up there, but we don't think it's giving us a drainage headache there. But be good to know if there's some more information from the ground. But in terms of the fish-friendly screw pumps, we've got probably 12 months ago, Greg, 2 years ago, we did a piece of work on whether the pump should be screened or not, and we've landed that. And we've also had some feedback from the manufacturer of those fish-friendly pumps to say that they should be screened as well. So I'm not sure if there's an action there, Greg, to maybe bring that back to the next committee, but we've done a lot of work in the space. I'm not sure what else would be.
So through you, I think we're getting into the operational space. We certainly keep an eye on these two examples because we've got just as much interest as anyone around this table to make sure these services are being provided appropriately. The Archimedes screw pumps do behave differently with weed buildup because of the way they take water from the sump. And whilst there might be a lot of weed building up, yeah, we've got some good information on Churchill which shows that those pumps still are performing well. I don't know if it's an action thing for this committee, other than to have the confidence that we're keeping a close eye on things, and if we do start to see operational issues, then we'll
some
respond
of
to
the
those.
subdivisions are saying that they've got a different opinion, so I'd like to see some sort of resolution. Certainly, I want the landowners to understand why. They might not necessarily agree with it, but they need to know, and they might understand it better, and they may still not agree with it, but at least we've been through that process.
So I can speak to that now. So Fish Flow have advised us that if we can have complete control over the water that's coming into those pumps, then you don't need screens. But if they are susceptible to having obstructions or other things come through the system, then the screens are appropriate to make sure that we protect those pumps from whatever comes in. And we've had some examples at Churchill East where we have had obstructions come through that caused issues. So the advice from Fish Flow is very clear about where we need screens and where we don't need screens. We're in the situation where we do need screens for these particular pumps to provide that protection we need. We've talked about the Makatawhiri Compartment 3 screw pump coming out. That it did actually need some significant work to resolve damage that had occurred over the pump life. And so it does happen. We want to try and reduce that risk as much as possible.
That's so if you've got a manufacturer saying under these circumstances you don't need it, but in these you do, that's, to protect the warranty and all that sort of thing. Where do we go from here? So Trevor, before we move away from you, you and Mike understand the need for resolutions to come forward by the end of September. And Ruben, you were going to potentially have a workshop if you needed, or else you can contact those self-administered groups, including Martingi there, I see. That's been recorded as an action, so we can just see what's happening. All right, that's that issue dealt with. So there's all the subdivisions in here. Hopefully you've had a look at the ones you're connected with and neighbouring ones. Is there any other issues that you see before we move off this subject?
Just the one, I think the Austin's one is not quite correct because it's exactly the same one as the one in front of it, horror. So maybe you got a bit of a typo there. So
sorry. Is that on page 27?
Further into the detail.
Page 58 and 59 are both the same.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that seems to happen.
Two schemes, the same money. So there's obviously a typo with them.
So well, can we just get the right, maybe those two out? So once you've got the
no, it doesn't matter.
Okay, so we'll move away from that. Questions, please, Brendan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just Greg, just your point there, what Fish Friendly Innovations are saying. I think Brendan's point, it'd be really helpful if we could have that report circulated, even if it's to just people who are interested in it from a scheme such as Mount Karaka, where we are looking to invest in these particular types of pumps. I think we need to fully understand the implications of it. I do get the point around that. I think that the damage to, correct me if I'm wrong, Miles, any damage to the compartment 3 pump at Mangatawhiri won't be from weed, it will be from something else.
That was caused, as I understand, from down from the. So I think the chance of that ever happening again.
Well, that water's been deflected away now.
Yeah. So if those screens were taken off, that plant just works naturally. It just doesn't cause issues.
So sorry, back to the point then, I think what is important is to understand context. I do remember when Churchill East was being installed and the Dutch guy's name was Gerhard?
The CE,
Yeah, he's the CE. he just said, look, he told us straight, he said, my pumps don't need screens.
Yeah.
He said at a high level, he said, so long as there's not logs and other things. But what he did say was for weed, he said, particularly over a certain diameter, the issue with weed is far less of it, actually no issue in his experience, and he's the guy who bought them. So whereas you look at the one, say at Mangateto, which is obviously a lot smaller diameter, well, there might be something else. So I think what is important, Greg, is that it's all about context, and then it's about what other mitigations, because it's all very well, and I think I'm not saying anyone's wrong here, but when we say it's all working well in terms of performance, it only works well because there's mechanical intervention, either by somebody on a rake or a digger raking the weed off the screen. Without that, that pump won't work. It will starve of water quite quickly. So I think we need to be really, and I'm not saying anyone's wrong. What I'm saying is context is really important, and what are the operating parameters that we should really be mindful of. And then you do come down to, well, if they are worried about something getting into the pump, then is that because of the type of construction of the pump? Given that they've got a lot of fiberglass and other types of compounds within the pumps, because they are fully enclosed. Now there'll be a reason why they do that, then we can lead on to a wider discussion, which I think we should take offline. But I think if we're looking to replace X amount of pump stations in the next X amount of time across the wider region, I think we need to have some really clear understandings around that, because some of the reasons what were put up back then, prior to that pump station being installed, was more partly around safety and worried about, I think there was a concern about, say, if somebody fell in, what would stop them going up into the pump. So we understand those things, and I think there are ways, obviously other ways to mitigate around them without actually necessarily building screens and then big structures for diggers to sit on. So this is where I think we just need to be really honest and make sure that we are talking about the same thing. And I actually just want to be really helpful here. And I think, Greg, I think you and the team are trying to be more mindful of let's not just say the landowners, let's just say stakeholders, and including mana whenua and other parties probably can have some practical input into this, which I think could be quite helpful, and it might help us solve some of these sort of situations without, while avoiding potentially costly mistakes. So maybe that's just helpful, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
I think it is wise words. All right, so is that the end of your presentation?
Yeah, just a quick through the chair, those two for Horror and Austins for that carryover, I will reproduce those and recirculate them to the committee for record to take that as an action.
Thank you. Is that the end of the agenda?
Three, Mr. Just make sure that, Jordan, you've captured the action for us to provide commentary from Fishflow Innovations regarding screens.
Yeah. Without putting Michelle on the spot, you've sat here diligently throughout. Thank you. Is there any update you can share at all with your thinking in relation to the where? Or would you not want me to embarrass you?
Probably just a reluctance to revisit the conversation.
No, I don't. I'm not want to open a can of worms.
No, that's fine. What can I say at this point in time? We had been obviously to date working strongly through the Whakamutunga Action Plan to understand the needs of the wider catchment and where that was going in terms. So we were hoping that that the plan would be that it would be a larger look scheme and the way the whole catchment functions and the where being that current infrastructure that's there. We acknowledge the where is it's a past the job of the day and what could be afforded. So we've been looking at other opportunities, I guess, to how we might, given that the action plan is moving along, into some of the larger priorities that need to be advanced and where the where sits in that. So yeah, hopeful to embark on a larger project as part of that wider look at it. about it that way. Yeah. Event itself is due for renewal right now, has been pushed out with legislation 8/29 time. We would hope that that wider piece of work will give us some better answers rather than have resources.
Yes, I think it's a good summary, and I know there's constraints on what you can say.
There's constraints.
Yeah, and I thank you for touching on that. So,
and as soon as I can share more, I will gladly do that.
Yeah, no, when you can, and I appreciate you responding. Thank you. Trevor.
I think it's marvellous that, you know, the process you're going through. And, you know, we've talked about it over the years, and you know, I can only say that the department's listening. And so, but these couple of one to go, you know, the meetings for the catchment plan, there's a thing on the table to say, pause the present process and focus on a number of items to do with the action plan. And one of them is a complete study of the flood protection scheme. We all put our hand up and say that, you know, it's from a bygone era as well. Yeah. And so my advice to you and department is maybe just hold off until the council decide where this goes, because it would be, you know, a bit sad from a taxpayer point of view to see you spending some money on a you know, on some sort of scheme to figure out where you go, where the council will also be spending money on the whole scheme, which the WEA is part of now. And so, you know, we just need to wait for their decision in a month or so where that goes, and then, you know, maybe it can be part of a bigger picture thing, because we all know that things have to change, but rather don't go like this, you know, let's just hang on and work together, because I think that's what we're trying to all do. Yeah.
Totally.
So there's a lot of stakeholders in that space, and I think we all need to go forward together rather than, and Michelle and the department are very aware of that. And I think it's, as you say, it's great to see Doc thinking more holistically and for the present, and the learnings from the last 50 years. So I congratulate Doc on doing that. So thank you for commenting. It's right. That's any further questions? Lunch was due at 12, but that's fine. Is there any further comments? Thank you. I'll get Greg to do the closing. Oh, the work program. Can someone move the report to be received, please? Thank you, Sid and Gary. All in favour? Against? Carried. Greg, Gary.
Kia ora. Una mai te uru tapanui, ki wātia, ki mama, te nākau, te tinana, te hinenaro, te ara takatū, koe rā e rongo, e whakaria ake ki ronga, ki a tīna huie, tai kia.
And I'll declare the meeting closed at 12:28. Thank you very much, and invite you to lunch.